with people that, have experienced a lot of baseball along the way, but it was hard to deny how well he played. And I know last year he had a great camp, but I think the game was moving really quickly on him when we actually broke camp and got into the regular season, whereas I think he had a very purposeful off season. He worked on a lot of things, and I just feel like he's looking at this game a lot differently than where he was a year ago. And so, I feel like he earned this opportunity, and I think he's going to make the most of it.
That's what it sounded like yesterday on the Cardinals Radio Network with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The Cardinals have made their decisions, and honestly, this team doesn't do much that surprises me. This stuff surprised me, Alex. Victor Scott is coming north with the team. He's going to be your starting center fielder. And according to the team, they've said this publicly time and time again over the last 24 hours, he will be starting every day. This is not a platoon. This is not a situation where it's a trial run. Victor Scott is the starting center fielder for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, that surprised me. What also surprised me, and we'll get into this a little bit more later on today, is that Matthew Liberatore is your fifth starter to start out the season. They're going to go to a six-man rotation once they get to that 13 games and 13-day stretch. Steven Matz will be a part of that. Michael McGreevy will be heading down to AAA. These are, at least relatively speaking, surprising decisions by a team that doesn't do a whole lot when it comes to surprises nowadays. So let's start with the Victor Scott one, Alex. Oli Marmol said the following at the end of spring training yesterday. Quote, "You tell someone to go work on something and they come out and do exactly that, you have to reward it. Scott has earned his spot. He is the center fielder. He's going to play. At the end of every month, we'll evaluate it. We'll sit down with him. We'll have conversations, and we go from there. But this isn't a situation where he's got 2 weeks to show what he's capable of. It's not that," end quote. Alex, what'd you make of the decision? T-Bone, what'd you make of the decision? 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. What did you think of the Cardinals going with Victor Scott II as their starting center fielder to open up the season?
Surprised, just like you. And honestly, good on the Cardinals. The first thing I thought of when I saw all of this was, man, this is a cold-blooded move by the Cardinals to basically tell a guy that they already told earlier in spring training was making the team, and Jose Fermin, nope, not going to happen anymore. And you're sending other guys down. You're telling guys you're not going to get the ample playing time that you expect because Victor Scott is making this team. But good on them. You're rewarding a player that basically showed you what he did in the offseason, the work that he went to correct what happened last year, and then put it into form in spring training for you. He was one of the most consistent bats for you all of spring training. This is a move that the Cardinals typically don't do. Old Cardinals is sending Victor Scott down to Memphis saying, hey, you did great, but you're not making the team because you're young and we don't got a spot for you. That's old Cardinals. I hope this is turning a new leaf for this Cardinals organization that rewards younger players that are showcasing the ability to make the adjustments and give them the reps. Plus, people aren't excited about this team. You know what gets people excited? Guys like Victor Scott. So now you're starting to integrate a little bit more youth into this roster that you've talked so much about. You have a guy that was really good through spring training who is not only making the roster, but they're telling you he is the starting center fielder.
I don't think this is new, though. They do that every year. They did that 2 years ago with Jordan Walker. They did it last year with Victor Scott II. They did it a few years ago with Dylan Carlson. The Cardinals do that. They buy into spring training stats. I think they're wrong in doing so, but to me, this is actually not a new thing that they're doing.
They do it when there's a spot open for them. Like when Victor Scott made it last year, it was because who was the one that was injured? Carlson, thank you. The Jordan Walker one wasn't supposed to. Yeah, Nootbaar. And Jordan Walker wasn't supposed to, and there was another injury that took place before that one.
Walker
was a spring training with that one.
They had 5 outfilders in 2023, which, guess what, feels kind of like this. Not so much outfielders, but it just being clogged up right now.
This one, though, isn't Nootbaar's hurt. Now, some guys are underperforming, which is probably part of the reason Victor Scott is making this, but there wasn't a spot for him in the center field spot. Everybody right now is trying to figure out where the at-bat's coming from. This was truly Victor Scott earned it and gets the opportunity.
I think there's some truth to that. I think they also want Victor Scott to be the center fielder, and right or wrong, I don't think they trust they don't trust Lars Nootbaar to be their starting center fielder. And I think that's really what did this. I think if you had him on Truth Serum, Oli Marmol probably would tell you, I value defense in center field. I've seen what it looks like when we don't have good outfield defense. It was 2 years ago. It was atrocious, and the bottom fell out on our team. At every turn since then, Oli Marmol has valued the defensive side of the ball every bit as much as the offense. So I think he probably would say, I wanted one of Siani or Scott in center field, and that dictated the decisions. And then Scott had the spring training that he did, and he's earned this opportunity. But you don't have that without also having somebody else fall out of favor. And the guy that is falling out of favor for the Cardinals is not the one that I thought it would be. This is John Mozeliak, T-Bone, yesterday on with the Cardinals radio network talking about the player that is likely to get fewer at-bats because Victor Scott is coming up.
I definitely think he's going to have to move around the field a little bit. He could also fit into that DH role from time to time. We're going to do our very best to get him those at-bats because we definitely want to try to accomplish that this year. And obviously the first month, there's going to have to be a little bit of patience because we want guys to sort of get into a groove. But obviously Oli and his staff are very thoughtful in that, and hopefully we can make that a success.
He didn't mention the name. It's Nolan Gorman. Nolan Gorman is the one that is expected to be plucked from the lineup. My expectation as of today, Alex, Nolan Gorman is not starting on opening day. It will be Alec Burleson as your designated hitter. He'll split time at DH/first base with Wilson Contreras. And you'll see Victor Scott in center basically taking the spot of Nolan Gorman. That's what surprises me. Because we've talked about this all offseason. This was the year that you had to learn about Nolan Gorman. And they're basically saying, you know what? Actually, we don't. We know what Nolan Gorman is. Victor Scott's the one that we want to see more of. That shocks the hell out of me, dude.
Once again, not a typical Cardinals move.
No, that one is surprising.
Because a typical Cardinals move is, yeah, Victor Scott was great, but Nolan Gorman needs at-bats. Nolan Gorman, we've got to know what Nolan Gorman is. He's a big piece of our future. He's got to play every day. That's the old Cardinals, to where no matter what the spring training stats are going to tell you, he's going to be our starting second baseman. And now they've switched it. They're like, no, you did not perform. You did not make the adjustments. We've got another second baseman who's able to play your spot. We've got another DH option who, frankly, has been a better bat from last year, really 2 years ago on. And Victor Scott has outperformed you in spring training. So you basically got Wally Pitt because you didn't perform well in spring training. That's the breath of fresh air for a Cardinals team that I just am not used to.
Man, I don't know if it's breath of fresh air.
I like it. Nolan Gorman has been bad.
Let me explain it a little bit, though. If Nolan Gorman hits, you've got a 30 home run hitter. I don't know if he's ever going to hit. But who else on this team has that potential?
How long are you going to keep saying that, though?
Because
we've done 3 years of if Nolan Gorman hits, he's going to be this.
But he did 2 years ago.
Right, but we've also
it's one bad year.
But we've also done this with Tyler O'Neill.
It was one bad year,
and they kept living on it. And they said, "Well, we'll get back to it." Dylan Carlson, his rookie year, we'll get back to it. At some point, you got to stop saying he could be this.
Most of these guys get multiple years, though. That's the difference. And what I know Cardinals fans at least have said in the past is, you're giving up on guys too early, and then they go on elsewhere to have success, right? That was the old criticism of the Cardinals, and now the criticism is you're sticking with guys too long. There is a happy medium. I do agree with that. But if Nolan Gorman doesn't get that opportunity this year, he's traded at the deadline or he's traded in the offseason, and he goes on to hit 30 home runs elsewhere, how are fans going to respond to that? I think that is a fair question to ask today. Let's first guess it, not second guess it. If he ends up doing what Adolis Garcia or Randy Arozarena did, and I know it's a flawed comparison for those two specifically because they didn't get that opportunity on the big league club, but man, people are going to be very upset if that ends up happening. I think it is a more than reasonable question to ask, should they have given Gorman that opportunity first and then went about it a different way? I think this is more fun. This is more exciting. Victor Scott is the shiny new toy that we haven't seen fail as often as Nolan Gorman did. But Victor Scott was also excellent in spring training last year and then failed spectacularly during the regular season. And everybody wanted him sent down because he couldn't hit. And he wasn't great in center field defensively either. This looks different. He looks much more comfortable at the plate the way that Nolan Gorman did a couple of years ago at the plate and defensively. So I'll be curious to see what this looks like after a month. Are they actually going to be able to stick to what they're saying right now, which is Victor Scott is starting every day in center field. Nolan Gorman is not going to get every day at bats. We're going to commit to Alec Burleson and Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar and Jordan Walker. Those are the young guys now that we're going to be seeing on an everyday basis. I don't know, man. This team has said stuff in the past. I just don't know how much I actually believe it. It's fun. It's exciting. It does feel a little bit different, but I don't know how much of that is artificial versus how much of that is like This is a real tangible change within the St. Louis Cardinals and their approach to
and
things.
that's the part that I'm still skeptical of. Despite me feeling like it is a breath of fresh air, I am still very skeptical of them saying, like, look, this isn't just a 2-week thing. Are you going to stick to that when it looks bad for 2 weeks? Are you going to keep playing that specific player? My only thing with Nolan Gorman, because I won't be hypocritical, I was the one that was saying, like, hey, Nolan Gorman, you need to give him the at-bats. His leash should be this year. I guess my pushback to my own theory is, at what point do you say enough's enough? Like,
apparently 1,400 at-bats.
Yeah, well,
And a spring where he didn't hit for power.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the actual number is that baseball aficionados believe is like when you know what a player is.
Everybody says that it's a different number.
Yeah,
so.
because like defensemen, it's over. Why am I blanking on this right now? It's over 100 games. I think, nope, not 100 games. 10 seasons. 10 seasons is what Al McInnes was the one that said. 10 seasons is when you really feel like you know what you got for the defenseman.
I don't have that kind of patience.
It is insane, but
You
typically,
need a decade.
But typically, you need to see a lot of it for guys
They're
to
almost done
develop.
with their career at that point.
Sometimes,
That's
but they get in
crazy.
at 19. I actually might have flubbed that number. I'm trying to remember it right now. But, I mean, 1,000 at-bats seems like an awful lot to sit there and say, there's still something else in the tank.
I don't know, man. That's like 2 full seasons. I think there are a lot of guys that after their 3rd or 4th year, they start to break out. We did that a few weeks ago where I talked about a few of the guys from that 2015, I think it was, top 10 prospect list that it took until they were 25, 26 years old to really find out what they are. Nolan Gorman is entering his age 25 season 2 years ago. This is not that long ago. 2 years ago, Nolan Gorman in 119 games hit 27 homers and 76 RBIs with an OPS of 15% above league average. He was horrible last year. And anybody caping for him, God bless you. You're doing something that I'm unwilling and unable to do. But he was terrible last season. It was a one-off potentially. I wanted to find out this year if that was the case. I wanted to find out, can he get back to what he was 2 years ago? I like Victor Scott in the lineup, but all of this comes back to Nolan Arenado is still here. And with Nolan Arenado here, it makes you choose some difficult paths. There is no longer a path of least resistance. It doesn't really exist for them unless they were willing to put Lars Nootbaar in center field. But that's not even really path of least resistance. Somebody was going to get blocked. Somebody was going to, because Nolan Arenado is still here. I never in a million, if you had asked me all offseason, who are the top 3 players that could be blocked by Nolan Arenado, I would not have named Nolan Gorman. This is a shocking development for them to effectively give up on Gorman heading into the 2025 season. It speaks to how bad his spring training was. It speaks to how bad his 2024 season was. This is a 25-year-old former top 50 prospect in Major League Baseball, a first-round pick by the Cardinals that has left-handed power, that can play second and third base, at least capably. And they are saying, no more. No more from you. We would rather see Burleson, we would rather see Nootbaar, we would rather see Brendan Donovan, and we would rather see Victor Scott than to go out there and see Nolan Gorman again every day early on this season. That is a damning indictment on where Nolan Gorman currently stands within the organization's view.
Yeah, 100% with you. I find it shocking that they want to go this path. And I'll tell you this, my biggest fear for them right now is because of what they're trying to do. Where, I mean, you heard Mo say the cut there when he was talking about Gorman of, hey, we're going to try and get everybody at bat. So that way we can kind of balance this. Though Gorman is the odd man out, he's still going to get at bats. Now, I don't know how much, but he's still going to get at bats. The problem is they're going to go through this rotating cast of, okay, so maybe Gorman's at second this day, then he goes to third, and then maybe he's off, and then he's DH, and then we take Scott out of the lineup for a day. If they do what they did in 2023, what was the biggest lesson they learned from 2023, which they clearly have already forgotten? It was, hey, we need to have a stabilized lineup, right? We need to have 9 guys. We're going with 9 guys because then we can get answers on what they look like in a month. My biggest fear is they're not going to have these answers because they're going to be yanking and pulling guys in and out of the lineup. And the problem is because if they did go the path of, hey, we are just, we're giving up on Gorman, at least for a month. Let's see what it looks like in a month. We'll reset where we're at that point, and then maybe Gorman's back in the lineup. Then I'd go, okay, that kind of sucks because you don't find out much on Nolan Gorman, but at least you get answers on these 9 guys. Problem is I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's going to be a rotating door of which guy is sitting on the bench each day, which, as we've seen, is hard to do, and you don't get the proper answers. And that's how they came to the conclusion in 2023 where it was, Walker going down? Yeah, why not? Because it's path of least resistance. That's my biggest fear right now as to where they stand. They are in a massive roster log jam.
And that's why I just would have, for me, It's hard to do because he earned this opportunity. So did Michael McGreevy. Michael McGreevy earned an opportunity in the rotation with what he did last year and what he's done so far this spring. Sometimes it's not about earned. It's about what is best for our organization right now and what is best for us long term. And the best thing for the organization in the rotation, I think they got it right. We'll get to this later on. Is Michael McGreevy down in AAA. It sucks, but it's the reality. I think personally, what I would have done in this spot, and it would have made everybody in our listening audience mad right now, I would not have been a particularly popular person in St. Louis. I would have sent Victor Scott down. I would have played Lars Nootbaar in center fields every day and find out the answers on what we have right now internally with our guys that are 25 plus. Find out what you have in Gorman. Find out what you have with Burleson. Find out what you have with Nootbaar and if he can stay healthy in center field. Find out what that looks like, frankly. And in a month, if Scott's still hitting down in AAA and you're getting bad returns on some of these guys, you can adjust course. They decided to adjust course a month earlier than what I was prepared for, and honestly, what I personally would have done. He's Alex's T-Bone on BK. In 15 minutes, we're going to get into the NCAA tournament, including a total lack of upsets that we've seen so far in this tournament. We all said early on, we think this could be the year that we see a little bit of chalk once we get to the Sweet 16 Elite 8. We have seen more than a little bit of that chalk. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. YouTube chat is off and running today at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, we will talk about your St. Louis Blues. I actually thought they had a relatively unconvincing weekend, and it resulted in 2 wins by a final score of 8-2. Not too shabby. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Blues get it into the middle. Thomas hitting the trailer. Kyrou, he scores! Jordan Kyrou with a quick shot to the net. Gets the assist from Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas now has 40 assists once again. Dvorsky has it. Makes the play to Bolduc to Thomas. Over to Texier. Score! Well, that was a thing of beauty. 3:03 to go. St. Louis Blues get the power play goal by Texier. Thomas is going to get the stick to the front of the goal. Blues clear it out. Shen to the open net. Score! 4-1, St. Louis. They've scored 4 more in 6 straight. 2 seconds left. Bring out the Zamboni. St. Louis Blues beat the Predators 4-1. They've won 6 straight games and increased their points lead, holding on to that wild card spot.
That's what it sounded like yesterday right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. The Blues win over the weekend, 4-1 against Nashville, 4-1 against Chicago as well. 2 games that, Alex, I know this sounds strange. I didn't think they played all that well over the weekend. They win by a combined score of 8-2, and you leave saying to yourself, at least for me, feel pretty good about the 4 points. Didn't feel great about the game overall. That's fine. It's a pass-fail test at this point in the regular season. What did you take? What was your biggest takeaway from the Blues' 4 points over the weekend against 2 relatively bad teams in Chicago and Nashville?
For me, it was overcoming some more obstacles that we haven't seen yet for the Blues, because all the way back in the Four Nations, or since the Four Nations break, every single game they've played has felt like, with the exception of that LA Kings overtime one, but it's understandable when you didn't have Fowler or Parayko and you needed your goalie to win that game for you. When you picked up a point, you lost in overtime. But the Pittsburgh Penguins lost, the Dallas Stars lost. They still played awesome in those games, and it was one area, whether it was Tristan Jarry or the penalty kill, that bit you. These 2 games, I agree, it was ugly at times for the Blues. Now, I don't think they were outplayed for the full 60 minutes. They found ways to kind of bring the momentum back, but it absolutely was not their best games, and you still found a way to overcome it. And then take into consideration your loss of Pavel Buchnevich. Last night, you also didn't have Sundqvist or Nick Leddy, and you still found ways to not only beat the opponent, but it wasn't beating the opponent where your goaltender stole the game and it was a 2-1 final score. You did capitalize on multiple opportunities. The opposition just gave you chances to kind of make them pay, and you capitalized on it. So, to me, when a team can win games when they're playing probably a C game or a C minus, and you're still finding ways to not only beat them, but win by multiple goals, and I know they're bad opponents in Chicago and Nashville, to me, that doesn't matter. When you're not playing your best and you're handling adversity and you're still finding ways to win easily, that's where you really know that a system and a structure in place is working. And for me, that's where the Blues are at right now.
We've also seen a lot of teams across the league, once their top guys go down, whether it's a top line forward and a top pair defenseman, looking at you, New Jersey, you pluck those guys out of the lineup and they just completely crumble. The Blues had those guys out this weekend. Booch was out. Colton Parayko has been out. And you look at the performances over the weekend, yeah, they weren't perfect, but they don't need to be perfect right now. They had also played, 6 games in 8 days, Alex?
Yeah, and they won all 6 of them.
I mean, they were probably dead tired by the end of that thing.
They had 3 straight weeks of playing 3 games in 4 days with travel involved in all of them.
Yeah, and at least this one, you were home the whole time, but back-to-back games, I don't care if you're playing bad opponents, you got the job done. And ultimately, that is what I think the lesson is of the 2025 version of the Blues. And we're just talking about what's different about the Cardinals, or is it different? This is different, man. The Blues are using 0 excuses. Monty had that quote, I believe it was last week, where he was like, yeah, I was excited when we had some travel issues because I knew if there's adversity, these guys are going to find a way to overcome it. And that's what this weekend was. There was a little bit of adversity with Pavel Buchnevich not being available, and they found a way to overcome it. You see the debut for Dalibor Dvorsky. Thought he overall played a pretty good game last night, despite not a ton of playing time out there, but looked solid overall. Wasn't a liability for them. You picked up the 4 points that you needed. And ultimately, this time of the year, I can talk about process until I'm blue in the face. Right now, this ain't the time for process, dude. This is the time about getting those results because you are in the midst of a legit playoff push, and the Blues are doing everything that is necessary right now to be able to lock that thing up.
You had somewhat, I think a lot of people labeled it a cupcake schedule in the month of March in terms of taking on the Anaheim Ducks twice, the Predators 3 times, the Blackhawks. And with the exception of the Pittsburgh Penguins game, you got the job done in all of those. And the Penguins one, you could get the exception because you got 3 out of possible 4 points against the Kings in those 2 games. So you did the job that you needed to do. You extended your gap on Calgary and Vancouver and Utah, and now your schedule opens up a little bit more. But specifically, the game against Vancouver, we talked on Friday about the chances of an emotional letdown. Felt like that a little bit against Chicago in that game on Saturday, but you found a way to pull through with it. When they're handed adversity, the last 3 years, it's been, they're going to lose this game. Now, and specifically last night where they had a lot of phantom calls against them, man, they never wavered. Yes, Nashville got some opportunities, and yes, they had some momentum. I think their high danger chances, they had 9 in one period, if I'm not mistaken.
It was one of the worst games in that regard for the Blues in basically since the Four Nations.
But even Stamkos, or it was Forsberg, said last night for the Predators, like, yeah, we generated 17 shots on goal in the third period, but we didn't really have any in terms of dangerous areas. So even when the Blues are giving up some, they're not giving up the same chances that the opposition used to score against them, which again tells me a structure is in place right now that even when you're playing your worst, you're still finding ways to eliminate the opponent.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Alex, we have had a number of people text in something about this. What did you make of Zach Bolduc? The cross-check? It was, I think, pretty clearly the correct call.
Oh, yeah.
But what did you make of him going out there and he's sticking up for his teammate in that spot?
I loved it. I loved everything about it, and that, like, I was never on the page of like a player is untouchable, but that made me a little bit closer to it with Bolduc. And it's like, man, like
that moment,
yeah, maybe that tells more about myself than anything. But I just, here's the thing. I always reference, and I know Curbs does this as well, that game against the Tampa Bay Lightning 3 years ago where Robert Bortuzzo bumped into Andrei Vasilevsky and all 5 Tampa Bay Lightning players threw their gear down and just swarmed Bortuzzo. There have been so many instances over the past couple of years where a guy goes by and takes an extra hack at Jordan Binnington, takes an extra shove at one of their players post-whistle, and the Blues just skate away from it. And you're like, man, there's just no team camaraderie. It's always had to be Braden Shen that has basically answered the bell for the Blues. Now think of what this last 3 weeks have been like. Jake Neighbors has been doing that. Nathan Walker, I think, has been in 3 fights in the last 6 games. You've got Tyler Tucker doing it, and then Zach Bolduc does it. Like that, Bolduc doesn't even play on the same line as Robert Thomas consistently, but when he gets his opportunity, and it was a dirty chance by the Nashville Predators player, Bolduc came in and just threw him down. And Falk said it best after the game last night. That goes to show you that everybody on this team is bought in right now. When you've got guys sticking up for each other, everyone is bought into the same message, and it tells you where Zach Bolduc's at. So it was absolutely the right call. I'm surprised the amount of people that I see say, like, why did he get a game misconduct for that? Go back 2 years ago, Robert Bortuzzo did the same thing to Victor Arvidsson with Nashville, and he got a game misconduct and a 4-game suspension. So Bolduc's not getting the suspension. He's not a repeat offender with this. It's just a fine today. But I loved every second of it because now it tells you this team is bought into the same message that Jim Montgomery has given them.
If you're looking into the wildcard standings right now, Blues have played 72 games, which makes them quite a bit different than these other teams. It feels like the Blues are constantly playing and nobody else is. The Wild currently have the top wildcard spot as of today. 70 games played, so 2 fewer games played, 85 points, so 4 points up on the St. Louis Blues, who have 81. And then behind them right now, Calgary, 69 games played, 77 points. So they've got 3 games to play with. Vancouver has fallen off, man. 70 games played, 76 points, and Utah, 70 games played, 75 points right now.
Yeah,
so those are your
the
standings as of today. Calgary is really the team that the Blues are battling with for that final wild card
spot. That loss to the Rangers for Vancouver in regulation was massive. That's about as deflating as you can get because they were up, lost it, and didn't get a point in it.
They are now negative 21 in the point differential. The Blues are a plus 10 in goal differential on the season. So a 31 goal difference in terms of the differential on the year, despite the fact that if you just look at their overall records, pretty damn similar.
Isn't Calgary pretty bad too?
Excuse me, Calgary is the negative 21, Vancouver negative 17.
I knew Calgary was up there as well.
Utah's the better one of the 3, actually. They're minus 9.
Minnesota even now is a negative on the season, -1.
I know we said this last week of like, I don't think there's a chance of catching Minnesota. Keep an eye. Minnesota plays Dallas tonight. You're 4 points behind them, and they're going to have only one game in hand after this one. Again, that's
I go back to, I don't think I want that.
I actually do. I want them to take on a Pacific Division team. They've just had their way with the Pacific Division. And
more so than Winnipeg. You're the one that's always been saying, like, you don't trust Connor Hellebuck in the postseason. Not sure about that team.
It's not about Winnipeg. It's the second round if you get to it. It's Dallas or Colorado.
Oh, man. Give me a playoff series win. I'll be thrilled.
Yeah, but I mean, we've all said the same statement all year. If they get to the playoffs, you believe that there's a chance because of Jordan Binnington. And I'm going to give my team the better chance if it's against I mean, Vegas might be out without Tomas Hertl now. And LA and Edmonton are 5 points behind Vegas. And nobody in the Pacific Division concerns me. And it's the second round, too. I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself.
You wouldn't be worried about Edmonton?
No.
Oh, I'm terrified of
scared
Edmonton.
as hell of Edmonton,
Joey will say this too. The last 3 years, the Blues have matched up so well against Edmonton.
Yeah.
They got a goaltending problem. McDavid and Draisaitl are hurt, and I know they'll be healthy by the playoffs. Edmonton doesn't have depth, and they don't have defensemen.
Yeah, they've just got the 2 best players.
Yeah, I was gonna say that kind of. I've seen those guys truly beat the Blues.
I'm telling you guys.
Literally,
I was in person actually. Yeah,
totally agree. But I'm telling you guys, I think they match up with Edmonton very well.
Let me ask you a different way then, because it sounds like if that's the case, you think they could beat basically anybody. Because if you can beat Edmonton, you can beat anybody.
Dallas and Colorado are the 2 teams that concern me right now.
Okay.
Because Colorado, McKinnon and McCarr always seem to have their way with the Blues, and they've added a lot more speed and depth. Dallas is concerning as well because of their depth. Like depth in your group of forwards is very concerning in the playoffs. If you've got a third and a fourth line that can do damage against you, that's where you really start to see the best teams kind of get the advantage. And out of everybody in the playoffs, I think Dallas, Colorado, and St. Louis has the best depth at forward.
He's Alex Estibo, and I'm BK. Talking more about the Blues coming up at the 12 o'clock hour. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. That's coming up in 15 minutes. But next, we'll get into some of our takeaways from the first weekend of the NCAA Tournament. Very few upsets, excluding my Missouri Tigers, unfortunately. T-Bone's Illini go down over the weekend as well. We'll get into some of our biggest thoughts coming out of the weekend that was in the NCAA Tournament next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues take care of business last night as they take down the Nashville Predators. They will be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Montreal Canadiens. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 7 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. And Cardinals wrap up their spring today as they take on the Memphis Redbirds in Memphis. They also finalized their 26-man roster yesterday as Victor Scott II will make the team and be the starting center fielder on opening day, and Matthew Liberatore makes the St. Louis Cardinals rotation as Steven Matz will start things off in the bullpen. Cardinals start the season on Thursday when they take on the Minnesota Twins. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Gillespie from the out of bounds to the freshman Queen who's driving, floats it. Oh! Maryland on the right side of a buzzer beater with life into the Sweet 16.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's what it sounded like last night as we finally got a buzzer beater in this year's tournament. It took a while, but we finally got there. Was it a travel or was it not? We'll get to that quickly.
Totally a travel.
Totally a travel.
Took 3 steps.
Yeah, he took 3
Picked
steps.
up his dribble, then took 2. That's not a travel.
That was
You travel, you
totally
don't
a
call
travel.
it. Nico Medved,
Colorado State.
the coach for Colorado State, was asked afterwards about that, and he said, listen, whether it was or it wasn't, it doesn't matter. It wasn't called. We lost the game. Good on you, Medved.
No.
Good on
Blame
you
the
for not
officials.
being a
Take the
sore
Dan
loser.
Hurley
He just
approach.
got paid by Minnesota. You got money to throw around to get a fine.
Take the Hurley approach.
All right, so that was finally, I believe, the first actual buzzer beater that we saw in this year's tournament. There have been some really close games, some good games, but overall, not many that finish with that kind of excitement. Alex, just let's go 30,000-foot view of the tournament thus far. How have you felt about it? Has it lived up to your typical expectations for an NCAA tournament?
No, it's been very boring. Now, I'm probably in the minority of this because I've had hockey games in 3 of the 4 days of the tournament, so I haven't been able to sit down. I know. I haven't been able to sit down and actually focus on them. But every chance that I'm watching the scores on my phone or I'm kind of turning it on every once in a while, I just feel like the higher seed is up by double digits and there's no chance of a comeback. There's no real whoa, where'd this team come from? Even last night, Colorado State, the buzzer beater that we're talking about, I thought that was going to be the moment we were oh, finally we got something interesting. Nope, fell apart towards the end there. So I just personally feel like it's been very boring. When I put the bracket together, it was chalky. And I'm like, man, I hope that this tournament doesn't go this direction. And it really is living up to it.
This is the first time that the Sweet 16 is composed exclusively of major conference teams since the Sweet 16 began in 1975. Only 4 of those conferences are represented in this year's NCAA tournament in the Sweet 16. It is the Big 12, the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, and ACC with Duke. That's the only team that's just Duke. So, yeah, It's not what you typically would expect in an NCAA tournament. I found some of the games to be relatively entertaining, but overall, it just feels kind of flat.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it has the buzz, the excitement, the kind of you can't possibly miss this moment that you typically would expect in a first or a second round of the NCAA tournament. I think a lot of that goes back to look at the teams that won yesterday. Florida, Duke, Bama, Michigan State, Kentucky, and then Ole Miss. That was a bit of an upset against Iowa State, and they beat the ever-living hell out of them. But this goes back to, we knew going in, Alex, you said it a million different times, there's some injury questions with Iowa State. This is not the team that we saw most of the season. So that was a bit of a one-off there. Maryland, Arizona. These are blue blood types of programs that just flat out lived up to expectations.
Yeah, the biggest game, surprise, I guess, is what BYU taking down Wisconsin.
Arkansas over St. John's on Saturday was probably the biggest surprise of the weekend. And it's Cal who finally got his team to play the way that he wanted to over the final month of the season.
And there were people skeptical, though, of Patino and his St. John's team, it sounded like, going into it.
2 of them right over here.
Yeah, so I mean,
Me and T-Bone said this is a team that does not shoot it well, and they are a team that does not score it well. If they run into a team that can defend them a little bit, it's going to be tough for them to keep up.
Yep, and that's exactly what happened, and that's why they went home early. I do feel like it has been flat. I was a little surprised. I think it was just day 1. I haven't seen numbers for the other 3 days so far, but day 1 was the most watched day one of March Madness, which I'm not surprised by because it is day one. I'll be curious to know how the numbers look now that it has been chalk.
Stars are playing, man.
And I think that's what's important. And I find it fascinating because, like, I look at this and I thought for sure, like, BK had brought it up. Hey, doesn't it feel like this could be more chalky? And I went, it does feel that way, but, like, it's basketball. Stuff happens. Like, you get a McNeese that will beat a Clemson, and there'll be another 12, or like a Drake will win, or there'll be somebody else that will pull off an upset. And really, it's just those two. And the overarching theme so far has been typically what happens is you see when a game is close, you see that, especially in the first two rounds, that top seed maybe starts to get a little antsy, right? Start to panic a little bit of, well, we're supposed to win and they're still here. And that's what we've typically seen. Every game's had moments, for the most part, where it has been, hey, this is kind of a close game. You're kind of intrigued. And then all of a sudden there's just that one run in the second half, and it puts that top seed on top, and they put it away. Exactly.
Auburn on Saturday had that. Alex, we were out there at Max in downtown Alton, Illinois. By the way, it was great to see many of you guys out there. Auburn was really close in that game against Creighton. They were down at the half, and it took until really the last 6 minutes or so, and then they just pushed them away, and they won by 12. If you didn't watch the game and you just look at the final score, it's like, oh, well, Auburn took care of business. Kinda. That was a really close game, though, for a long stretch of time. Drake against Texas Tech. That first half was pretty darn close. And then, boom, they pushed them away. It was game over. There was a period of time where, like, Michigan versus Texas A&M. Dude, that was a close game. I swear to you, it was a close game. And then Michigan just pulled away there at the end. So there's been a lot of those games where for 30 minutes or so, it feels as though this is teetering on the edge of going toward the surprise team. Somebody could advance that you're not expecting, and then ultimately in the end, whether it's the depth, the stars, whatever it is, Florida had everything they could possibly take from UConn. And I know UConn isn't like some mid-major program in the traditional sense, but UConn gave them everything they could handle. And ultimately, in the very end, they were able to get that one taken care of.
That one was on the refs. I support you, Dan Hurley.
You're the worst. T-Bone, I do want to get your thoughts on Illinois because
thankfully it's over.
That was rough, man. They didn't just lose. They got, I mean, it's a 9-point loss, but it felt like much more than that. They
looked like Mizzou just in the second day.
What happened to your team in that one?
Their best players weren't their best players. I mean, it's that simple, and I hate to give such a simplistic answer, but when you look at it, first off, they had a major turnover problem. That was one of their biggest issues is, hey, look, they were turning the basketball over way too often, and they would go through stretches where they would get they'd get back in the game, like what it ended up being like a 9-point game. You're like, okay, maybe it's finally clicked. And then they would play like 5 minutes of stupid basketball where they would turn the basketball over. Yakachonis was terrible in that game for them. Will Riley was basically absent. Brett Underwood basically sat him in the entire second half.
Theme of the weekend, stars getting benched.
Yeah,
St. John's, same thing.
Exactly. I mean, when Will Riley has 5 points and Yakachonis has 13, and some of that was more in garbage time, it's over. Your best players weren't there, and they didn't show up. And to me, from the get-go, I think 5 minutes into that basketball game, you could tell it was over. And for me, Yakachonis and Riley looked hesitant, which was a little odd. They felt like they were hesitant to let the ball fly. And then when Yakachonis started to turn the ball over, they had to pull him off the point guard spot and put Boswell there. It was like the perfect formula for Kentucky to win. I thought that was a game they could win. And it was just a matter of which Illinois showed up. And it ended up being the one that ended up getting blown out by Duke by 40. So, you know what? I'm disappointed. A Sweet 16 run would have made this season a success, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm kind of glad it's over because this team was infuriating to watch this season.
So I do find it interesting that there are still 7 SEC teams that remain. We are into the SEC, or we are into the Sweet 16, the SEC 16, basically. And there's only, I think, 2 games that don't have an SEC team represented in them. For all the talk after that first round of, hey, is this going to be a little less intriguing for the SEC than we anticipated, or there are a bunch of teams that maybe got in that shouldn't have because they were pushed up by the rest of the conference? No, man. This team was every bit as good as we thought, or this conference was every bit as good as we thought it was. The only teams that were at least 500 in conference play in the SEC that are not still playing today, there are 3 of them.
Yeah, who are they?
Texas A&M,
okay,
who lost to Michigan.
That one was surprising for me.
It was a little surprising, but Michigan just won the Big Ten tournament. They were a 5 seed. It wasn't like some big upset. They also ran into a really tough matchup. Texas A&M wins with their bigs. Michigan's one of the only teams in the country that can actually stack up 1-for-1 against Texas A&M's bigs. It made a lot of sense that they would lose. Mississippi State, who wasn't a great team this year, they got beat in the first round. And Mizzou.
Oh.
And Mizzou is the one that I don't have any kind of disclaimer for. They just
Well, Drake must have made it to the Sweet 16,
They
right?
sucked. Mizzou sucked.
they
And
did.
Texas Tech exposed them in every way that I thought Missouri would. Texas Tech looked like you're supposed to when you have NBA players on the floor against Drake. Apparently, Mizzou doesn't have the NBA players that I thought they potentially did. So, yeah, frustrating, disappointing weekend for Missouri fans watching that one. Coming up in 15 minutes, Katie Wu, Cardinals Insider, joins us next. Questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends out at Rhino Shield. When it comes to the exterior of your home, you need to use the right company that is going to make the home look perfect. And frankly, give the right materials that is going to last the time that you need it to for your home. Rhino Shield, they don't use paint when it comes to their exterior. It's a ceramic coating. And look, with all the rain that we're going to be getting in these next couple of days, you're wanting to make sure that that paint is going to be able to last. It's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. With Rhino Shield, you'll save some money on those electric bills when it gets super hot outside. Plus, it lasts. I used Rhino Shield to paint our home back in 2020, and today it still looks brand new, even with all of the weathering that it's gone through over these last 5 years. So give Darren a call today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. He'll come out. He'll give you the quote. He'll even give you his opinion on what will look great for your home. And let me tell you, he's really good with those opinions when it comes to the exterior. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line, and we will answer them here on BK and Ferrario. We also have the YouTube chat available at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. From the 636, T-Bone, this one's for you. I know they took a backseat to the Blues in college basketball over the weekend, but is it just me or is St. Louis City playing a boring style of soccer this year?
Oh, yeah. It's very boring.
Everyone was bragging about the clean sheets.
Man, I'll tell you this. I think what they're doing is going to work. Like, I think they will make the playoffs. Where they'll be, my opinion, probably like 5 to 8, somewhere in that range in the Western Conference. But, oh, my gosh, yeah, it's boring. I mean, they pack it in. And then they, like, slingshot forward, which is, okay, maybe we get that one steal, maybe we block that one shot, and then hopefully we can really beat you up the field, kind of almost like a transition in basketball terms. It is very boring. It reminds me of what the Blues did 2 years ago. I think it was the final year of Berube, where it was, we're just going to sit in our zone, and we're going to block everything. Are we going to score? Probably not. No, we're probably going to really struggle to score. Yeah, that's what it is, essentially. And it's working for them, and I think they can have success doing it. But, yeah, I won't lie. It is going to be a very boring style of soccer to watch, unlike Bradley Cardinals, which was, hey, we're going to be high press, we're going to be high flying, we're going to force turnovers, we're going to really put you in bad spots, and we're going to beat you when we do that. And that had success in year one, and the St. Louis City SC's pivot to that was, ooh, how about we just get really boring and block everything?
To be fair, Bradley Cardinal's strategy worked over the weekend.
He only scored 1 goal.
Worked.
Only one.
They won.
We've only given up 1 goal in 5 games, which is impressive.
I mean, the defense is clearly working.
Yeah.
It's just, can you score consistently while playing this way? And the answer so far has been no.
No.
But
This is a hard brand to play, too, for an entire season.
Yeah. I
It's
think in
tough to
soccer
get
it's a little
buy-in.
easier. I think it's harder to win with it. That would be where I would counter.
it's hard to get buy-in consistently if you can't get those goals because
Klaus-
people get frustrated.
Klaus might get bored up top.
All right, from the 636, guys, what do you think? Who do you think will finish the season with the most plate appearances between the following players for the Cardinals? Victor Scott, Nolan Gorman, Alec Burleson. Who finishes the year with the most plate appearances out of those three?
Burleson.
Oh, man.
I'll go Scott. If you're bringing him up on opening day, I think he gets the runway.
That's my lane. He's the one that I can really lock down where he's going to be playing if he hits early on. Burley's tough along with Gorman. I'll say Scott, too. I think it will be Scott.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. From the 801, guys, it seems as though Bolduc took a giant step forward when Monty stepped in. What was it about Bannister's coaching style, or maybe Montgomery's coaching style, that ended up getting the best out of Bolduc now?
I don't know if it's Jim. I mean, Jim Montgomery had an impact on this. I mean, he even said when he got here, he was like, we just told Zach Bolduc to shoot. I got to be honest, though, guys, like, Bolduc was playing well under Bannister. We just weren't seeing him that much. Like, he was scratched an awful lot. He had 5 points in 16 games. He was still a plus. He was only playing about 11 minutes a game, though, which right around a third-line winger. I think this is more on just Zach Bolduc gaining more confidence. You know, he's probably averaging around, what would you say now, about 13 and a half, 14 minutes maybe?
Ish, yeah.
Where he's at on the season. So he's playing a little bit more. Jim Montgomery is giving him more opportunities. He's on the power play. I think this is more just Zach Bolduc has gained confidence as the season's gone on, and he's working individually with Claude Julien all season. They have a scheduled work together every single practice where it's just those two on the ice doing specific things. So I'm not going to just say it's Jim Montgomery that's changed it. I think it's just confidence in Zach Bolduc, and he's getting opportunities down the stretch.
Yeah, I think there might be some confidence that is coming from Jim Montgomery. I think he exudes confidence into his players. But I think Alex is right. He was playing pretty well under Bannister as well. You just weren't getting the point production. That's really happened within the last 20 games. In his last 18 games, he has 9 goals, 14 points, and he's a +8 on the ice. To average that out over the course of a full season, it would be something like 40 goals, 64 points, and a +36.
Yeah.
That's the level of play that we've seen out of Zach Bolduc. That is a true bona fide goal scorer, but he's also shooting 28%. That's unsustainable. This is not going to continue long term. That's okay, though. It doesn't have to. He can settle in as a 20 to 25 goal scorer, and you've got a really good player with what he's been. So it's been really impressive to watch. Credit to the player, credit to the staff, credit to Doug Armstrong. They all had his best interest in mind with the way that they've gone about this. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll talk about the Cardinals' approach to their rotation, but we are going to ask about that with Katie Woo, the Cardinals insider, when she joins us next here on BK and Ferrario. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. One in O'Fallon, Missouri. One in O'Fallon, Illinois. They have another one in Town and Country. That's the one that I personally go to, and also in Sunset Hills. Check them out today. Super easy process. Go to their website, victorymenshealth.com. When you go over there, you'll be able to book that first appointment. You can also read about all of the different ways they can unlock your inner champion. And that means different things for different people. Maybe that means helping you with some of that unwanted weight that you gained over the holiday seasons. You've been trying to burn it off on your own, and it's really difficult to do. They can help you out with that. They'll have some answers for you at Victory Men's Health. They can also help you with those low testosterone treatments. They can help you with erectile dysfunction issues. They've got a red light therapy program and cardiovascular testing as well. Ask them about that. Ask them about their micronutrient labs that they can do for you. It's all available for you at Victory Men's Health. They will unlock your inner champion. Check them out today at victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Always happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline. It is presented by Callier and Thompson, to be joined by Katie Woo. She's the Cardinals insider for The Athletic, and you can follow her on Twitter for all of her updates, Cardinals related, at Katie J. Woo. It is officially the week of opening day, Alex Ferrario, and we got some updates yesterday on what the Cardinals are going to do for their opening day roster. Victor Scott II is heading north with the club. He's going to be the starting center fielder. Michael McGreevy going back down to AAA. You will have Matthew Liberatore in your rotation, and you will like it. And Steven Matz heading to the bullpen until they go to a six-man, which is also going to be taking place. It was a flurry of moves. Katie Woo is there to break it all down for us. Katie, we appreciate the time as always. How you doing today?
I am well, guys. Happy regular baseball season week. I am so excited for opening day. It's literally my favorite day of the year, which I know sounds like somewhat corny, but it is true. And I'm excited to have like actual real baseball to talk about and real decisions that actually matter to talk about, like we saw yesterday.
They do, and some of them were a bit surprising. I was personally surprised to see Victor Scott II, although I think he earned the opportunity to be with the Major League club. I was surprised to see them actually go in that direction. Were you, Katie, and what did you make of the decision?
I was definitely surprised, and it had nothing to do with Victor's performance. I agree. It shouldn't have really been a topic all spring on whether or not he should make the team. I was surprised because I feel like sometimes we're conditioned with this organization to for them to make the move that doesn't make a lot of sense because it's happened so frequently over the last 2.5 years. So, you know, when someone shows you your true colors, you believe them, right? So even though Victor Scott had an incredible spring and just did everything right and then some, I was still a little reserved on if they would do the right thing. So I'm glad they did. He's more than earned it. Definitely we'll see him in center field on opening day on Thursday. And, you know, I think the Cardinals made a ton of decisions on Sunday. I liked a few of them. I have some reservations about some others, but Victor Scott, I mean, they had to get that right because personally, I don't know what kind of message you're sending to a team, to a clubhouse. If you ask a player to come up and perform, he does exactly what he's been asked to and then doesn't make the club. I think that's really just a horrible message to send. So I was really happy for Victor and pleasantly surprised by the organization there.
Katie, we were talking about this in the show open. It seems like one of the guys that might suffer from Victor Scott being on this team is Nolan Gorman. How long, in your opinion, is his leash by the Cardinals this season?
Yeah, so I think it's less to do with Victor Scott making the club and also Michael Ciani making the club. One of my reservations about the 26-man roster is that it seems to be pretty redundant with multiple continuous positions like two left-handed defensive first center fielders and no backup shortstop, for example, right? And we talked to Oli Marmol, and he said it's not perfect. And in my head, I was like, you could say that again. But what Victor Scott being in center field does is creates that trickle-down effect. Keeping Michael Ciani on the roster also does that. It's going to be really challenging for Oli Marmol to get in the necessary amount of at-bats for Burleson, Donovan, and Gorman on a continuous basis, and he acknowledged that. I think he was very proactive and very fair and honest about that this is going to be difficult. But to me, I agree that Gorman is the one who is going to, I think, have the most plate appearances taken away to start. This is not to suggest that he's going to be a bench player, but I don't know if there's any real way for the Cardinals to play Gorman every single day like they planned on it, while also making sure they have Burleson and Donovan in there every day. And Donovan's going to be in there no matter what. He's going to switch between second base and left field. Burleson and Gorman, they can kind of vary between the DH depending on where Donovan is. But with Victor Scott in there, it does complicate things. It also complicates things to bring Michael Ciani as that fourth outfielder defensive replacement, because if you're thinking about late games, who would Michael Ciani be replacing defensively in the outfield? That's Jordan Walker. So that's also taking at-bats away from Walker and Gorman, who are the two players that John Mozeliak had identified all offseason as needing as much runway as possible. So I do think the Cardinals have created runway for players like Victor Scott, Matthew Liberatore. I'm sure we'll get to him. But for the two players they prioritized all offseason, Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, I think this roster impacts their bats and their amount of bats the most.
So I'm just trying to understand, Katie. Because all offseason, the stated goal was runway. And I think that some fans interpreted it, and I don't think they were necessarily wrong in doing so because the Cardinals organization wasn't very clear in this, but they interpreted it as, okay, that's going to be a lot of young guys are getting playing time. And there's some truth to that because technically Nolan Gorman is still young, but it seemed to me as if it was more of this is the last opportunity for some of these guys to really make their presence felt. And Gorman, to me, was at the top of that list. And so now, now that we've arrived at opening day, The two guys that are most impacted by what the Cardinals did and did not do this offseason, with Arenado being a part of that conversation as well, are Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. Am I understanding that correct?
You are. And if you're having trouble understanding that or comprehending that, join the club. But this is where I think the St. Louis Cardinals have shown that they are still the same organization. Yes, they did the right thing with Victor Scott. Yes, if you're going to bring Matthew Liberatore in as a starting pitcher, do it the way that they've said that they're going to do. He's going to be there, their fifth starter, every 5 days. He's going to get significant runway. We're going to be so tired of that word by like May.
Going to be?
Right, I know, seriously.
No, it's transition now, Katie.
I think that's where like fans get so frustrated, and rightfully so, is because we spent the whole offseason prioritizing like, hey, the Cardinals need to figure out who Nolan Gorman is, who Jordan Walker is, who Lars Nootbaar is, so that this transition season, whatever it is, don't call it a rebuild, when it takes place, when it ends in 2026 and Chaim Bloom takes over, Chaim knows exactly who to build around. And now I'm not sure if you're going to get that same clarity that the Cardinals wanted, and some of it does, to your point, have to do with not being able to trade Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras staying, Sonny Gray staying, to your point. But the way the roster is currently constructed, the two players that I think are going to have the most their bats cut the most are Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. And the whole point of this season was to give them as much length as possible and to not have to worry about, hey, if we don't get off to a good start, that's okay. Our bats are going to be guaranteed. We're going to have an assured amount of playing time. So if I'm Jordan Walker and I come out and I'm hitting 200 in April, I'm not going to Memphis. I'm okay. I'm still going to get in the lineup every day. I'm going to get a chance to figure it out. If I'm Nolan Gorman and I'm striking out 35% of the time and it's just not clicking for the first 3-4 weeks, that's okay. I'm going to have the opportunity to go out there and continue figuring this out at the major league level because the Cardinals are presenting us with that opportunity. Now, their playing time, they're going to feel the heat if they don't produce because they know if they don't produce, they're not going to be in the lineup every day. So that's, I think, the biggest what are we doing here with this situation. And I don't want to be like I totally dislike the roster. I don't. I do think they did some things really well. But how this shakes out for Gorman and Walker, I'm not sure.
Still excited for the season, Katie?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Katie, since we're on this topic. Is this because the Cardinals believe they can compete this year? Like why they've gone down this path that we're explaining?
Great question.
It is a fantastic question, and it's ultimately what is driving these decisions or lack thereof or the lack of clarity in a direction because they want to develop players at the same time, but they also want to win, and they believe that they can. So it's been – we've talked about the Cardinals being like in the middle all offseason. What this roster showed is that they are so committed to the middle, and they can't really argue it either way. Do I think that they can develop these players at the big league level and still win ball games? Absolutely. I think there is a lot of talent on this roster. I think it's the organization's job to put the players in a position to succeed, and it's on the players to perform. Like, both can exist. And if these players perform well, then I think we're going to see a better Cardinals club than maybe we're expecting. What we should be scrutinizing here is, are they going to be set up in a position to succeed? We talked to Oli Marmol about how he's going to structure his lineup, the fluidity, the flexibility. He said, he doesn't see that he needs to have as strict of a platoon as maybe he did last year, but he is going to have to shuffle people around to ensure the number of at-bats. The Cardinals are doing this because, and I don't want to suggest that they should just go out there and tank because I don't believe that. I don't believe that really for any organization, but especially here. Their problem is they are still trying to commit to winning, but their plan to doing so changes, fluctuates every week, it seems. And I'm not sure if that's a viable strategy going into a year. It's not as easy as just going out and winning as many games as possible. They have other things they want to accomplish. I think what the difficulty is trying to figure out how to weigh one against the other, what takes precedent, what doesn't, and how to do this all together so it makes sense. I said this in The Athletic yesterday, guys. They're going to find out in a couple days if this roster is feasible, but more so, they're going to find out if this plan is feasible, and it's not looking great to start.
So I guess I'm going to ask a couple of very quick questions. Katie, you just give me your gut reaction to these, okay? Are the Cardinals a better team with Matthew Liberatore in the rotation or in the bullpen?
Oh, I don't know. I think if you are...
if you're trying to win right now, do you think that the Cardinals are better with Matthew Liberatore in the rotation or one of Matt's or McGreevy in the rotation, in your opinion?
Matt's in the bullpen. I'm sorry, not Matt's in the bullpen. Livy in the bullpen.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because it almost feels as though what you're just saying there is yes, you're trying to win, but also you're trying to find out with Matthew Liberatore. So, like, then the question becomes, and I know Oli had an answer to you guys yesterday, and I appreciate it. I just don't know if I believe it. Liberatore is going to get this extended runway in the rotation, right? It's not this is not a trial run. He is a starter for them right now. Cool. That's the case today. What does that look like, though? Is it 3 starts? Is it 5 starts? Is it 7? What does that look like? And then the same thing apparently was not true for a guy like Nolan Gorman, who, yes, had a very bad spring training, and it's coming off of a bad season. But Nolan Gorman had 27 home runs 2 years ago, and now suddenly we're giving up on that. So what does that mean for a guy like Alec Burleson? Like, if Burleson struggles, and we know he's prone to going through these slumps because he is so swing happy, does that now mean that Gorman is going to be inserted into the lineup for him? Like, it feels as though this is 2023 all over again with some of the decisions that they're making in the logjam that they have self-imposed on themselves. So it's a long-winded way of asking, are they now putting themselves into the exact same position that they promised they would not do after the 2023 season again?
I wish I could do snaps because that was so good. And I think you nailed every point there. And not only is the messaging mixed with the direction of the franchise, it's mixed with the players. Because everything that Victor Scott and Matthew Liberatore did Michael McGreevy not also do the same thing? Right? And to your point about Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson. So I think 2023 is a very dangerous, slippery slope. And for everyone involved, I hope we do not repeat that kind of season. But there is a lot of the same problems, I think, going into the year. And it comes down to, are the Cardinals going to stick to their plan? So far, they haven't. And to be fair, a lot of things outside their control with who they traded, who they didn't, who had no trade clauses, et cetera, impacted things, whether John Mozeliak wants to admit that or not, right? But if they can stick to their messages, like, for example, if Matthew Liberatore goes out and after 3 starts, his falters is not good, and we see Steven Matz in that 5-man rotation, I'm going to be mad because that would be very symbolic to how 2023 went. If Nolan Gorman slumps all of April and all of a sudden he's back on the bench and not getting the opportunity, then I'm going to be like, hey, what is going on? Why is there so much mixed messaging? So I get the point, and they did self-impose this roster. There are some things I really like about it, but the majority of it I just have so many questions about. It's going to be ultimately, if the players go out and perform, we're not going to be talking about it. But if they struggle, the only thing we're going to be talking about is have the players been put in the right position to succeed, because that's exactly where we were in 2023, and it was clear 3 weeks into the season in April that they had not been.
And that's why I wish they had a clear message on this. And I know everybody wanted Victor Scott to make the team out of spring training, and he earned it with his performance. It makes everything way more complicated. And if I was in Mo's shoes, and it's a good thing that I'm not, because we would lose every game and I would be way over budget. But if I was, I wouldn't have brought Victor Scott on opening day, and that's an unpopular thing to say right now, but it does really make all of these things very difficult when it comes to the playing time. I do not envy the position that Oli Marmol is going to be in early this year. Hey, Katie, we appreciate the time as always. Hopefully we'll talk with you on opening day, our annual tradition of being out there at Ballpark Village. We're going to be out there again, so we'll talk about that off air, but we appreciate the time as always. Safe travels back home. We'll talk with you again soon.
You got it, guys. I'll see you Thursday.
Absolutely.
See you, Katie.
That's Katie Wu. Appreciate her time as always. You can read her great work, including the breakdown of all of the moves that were made yesterday over on The Athletic, and you can follow her on Twitter at Katie J. Wu. That's my big thing, Alex, is like, I just want consistency. If you're going to have a message all offseason, and then you get to opening day and suddenly it's all flipped completely, it's hard for me to hear that, especially if I'm a fan, and say to myself, oh, yeah, these guys know exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
Doug Armstrong had a plan and then went out there, and when they were able to get the offer sheets, yes, things changed. That they did. But from that moment, they said, we're a playoff team. And every decision from then on was about how do we make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They go out there and fired their coach like 20 games into the season because a better one was available. They're like, okay, if we can get 10% better with Jim Montgomery, we're going to go do that. Cam Fowler became available. They said, we're a playoff team. We need a defenseman. That guy's good. Let's go get him. At every turn, they said we're a playoff team, and the decisions were with that as the North Star.
But also stuck with their big message of saying, like, we're not going to jeopardize our future by trading pieces to just do something right now, and they did nothing at the trade deadline.
We're not doing anything stupid, but we are trying to win right now. Meanwhile, the Cardinals all offseason, runway. We get to opening day. Actually, Nolan Gorman no longer part of the starting lineup. What?
But I also agree with what Katie said, because, like, What kind of message are you sending if one of your younger players does everything you told him to do and makes all of the changes and is really successful? He's the best player for you in spring training, and say, cool, appreciate you doing what we told you. Now go to Memphis.
I don't think that's as hard of a sell as people are making it out to be.
I think it doesn't look good in the organization. It doesn't look good to your younger players. It
also doesn't look good that they told, apparently, according to reports, last week they told Jose Fermin, you have made the roster.
Oh, they did this.
That changed yesterday with Michael Ciani making the roster.
Who was the pitcher they did this with? KK, where they were like, you're a starting pitcher. And then all of a sudden he came to the clubhouse one day and was like, yeah, you're in the bullpen now. And he was like, well, I wasn't told about that. Yes, I do agree. This is the problem, though. It feels like the Cardinals are pulling on two different ropes at once. And I think the more important one is making sure the messaging is clear and your players feel like they understand what's taking place. You're not doing it with Gorman and Walker, but if you keep Victor Scott in Memphis and with Michael McGreevy, you're also not doing it with those guys.
I think there's some truth to that, no doubt. But I think that the explanation is very simple. Vic, we've got to see this during the regular season. We've got to see you continue to have this kind of success at AAA, because last year we saw this success in spring training, and immediately upon your arrival, we saw the results dip. And that happened not just at the major league level, but then it carried over into AAA. So prove this to us for a month at AAA. We'll get more information on you. And if you hit your way to the big leagues, you will be in the starting lineup every day starting on May 1st. I think that's a super easy conversation to have. It's going to make Victor Scott frustrated. It will. But he'll use it as more fuel to get up to the big league level. McGreevy, it just sucks, man. He's between a rock and a hard place. It was a numbers game for him, and he ultimately was on the outside looking in. I feel for him. I do. He has nothing left to prove. There's nothing you can say to him to be like, hey, go do... No, like, it sucks. McGreevy, I feel for you, seriously. But on the Victor Scott one, I don't think that one's that hard, and it is, again, a numbers game where you have too many guys for too few spots, and the one way you can make it work is by not bringing Victor Scott to the major league level and having Nootbaar in center field. I would have done that for a month and said, this is the way that we're going to go with it.
This is why the bigger problem here is, and why I asked the question to Katie of, like, are they, like, thinking they can compete? You should have shipped out more starting pitchers so you had a Michael McGreevy in your rotation. And I understand, well, you needed the innings. This was supposed to be a lost year. This was supposed to be a year where you give the...
though. That's where I think that the messaging has gotten a little, like, out of whack. I don't think they view this as a lost year.
Well, they should be.
And I don't know when that changed.
Why should they view it as a lost year?
Because what else, if it's not a lost year, what else is it?
I mean,
it's a competitive year.
It can be what the Blues are trying to do. Why is it all that dissimilar from what the Blues are trying to... Set aside the messaging, which I know is really hard to do. I understand that. But why does it have to be so much different than what the Blues have accomplished? Me and T-Bone were on the side that you're on right now for the Cardinals. We were on that side for the Blues. We said this does not look like a playoff roster to us. I think they might be going about this a little bit the wrong way. They have shut us up tenfold. They are a playoff caliber team. Even if they don't get in, they have earned that. They were right about this roster. So why do the Cardinals have to be so much different in that regard?
Because they're not giving the opportunity to the younger players.
Like Dvorsky and some of the...
Dvorsky didn't have a preseason the same way that Michael McGreevy had.
Sure.
And Dvorsky was never in the minor leagues. McGreevy pitched there last year.
I think it is a little bit different with baseball than in hockey. It's a fair retort. I do think it's a little bit different for baseball because their minor league system is just constructed in a way where these guys are just down in the minor league system for longer. Fair, but it's not as if the Blues went out and signed a bunch of defensemen to make sure they didn't have to go to Tucker and to go to Kessel. Like, they wanted those guys down in the AHL because they viewed it as, we need veterans at the NHL level. So those guys were also pushed down. And Kessel had success last year with this team, and he was said, hey, you're a 7th or 8th defenseman for us now. Sorry, you're not going to get that opportunity. Kessel was good.
And see, maybe that's where my frustration is at. But, like, you did the veteran thing already. You did it last year, and you were awful. You did the whole, we're getting pitchers so our minor league guys can stay in the minors.
This offseason. They didn't change anything with their pitching staff. They didn't go out acquiring somebody like Ryan Suter.
But they accomplished it last year. They brought in Lynn and Gibson so McGreevy wasn't relied upon at the major leagues. Yeah. And he pitched in the minors.
And
he was awesome.
That worked.
So why not give him the opportunity now?
Because I think they're still stuck. They're still stuck with the older defensive core because they still have Michaelis under contract.
But they could have moved on from
They didn't have the Krug injury. That's effectively what happened to the Cardinals. They gave the Krug contract to Miles Michaelis, and Michaelis said, I'm not going anywhere, the way that Torrey Krug did. And Torrey Krug had termites in his ankle, and so the Blues were able to get out of it. The Cardinals didn't have that. Nobody got hurt. Otherwise, McGreevy's in this rotation. But they didn't have the injury that the Blues had that opened up the opportunity for other young players to get that
But they
chance.
did have Fetty they could move on from.
But sure, they could have, but then you have no depth, and we're all complaining a month in that they don't have a sixth or seventh starter.
But you could have gotten depth in terms of a guy that is a fringe
So you
Memphis
go sign
to
Kyle
Major
Gibson?
League.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, a cheaper one. You couldn't find a guy
Well,
who
even
could
if you
pitch.
do that, you block it still.
Yeah,
right. Like
that
that's
guy
the
has
other
to be
issue.
on the roster. If you sign a major league contract in the offseason,
He needs to be on your 40-man roster.
He's got to be up.
Most of the
You
guys
need to be on your 26-man
Sure,
roster.
but you're not going to pay a guy, like Gibson got what, $5
million.
So say you paid a starter, I know who it would be, but pay a starter
Yeah, I mean,
$4 million.
I don't have a name in
but You're not
mind.
sending a guy with $4 million down to AAA.
No, but what I'm
that's what you'd have to do then, and
I
that's
don't
the
have a
scenario
name,
you're laying
but
out there.
my envision is some journeyman who can be in the minors and be at the majors.
those guys don't really exist, man. Those are young players. Those are the guys that are in your system. It's Michael McGreevy. Most teams, we get so caught up in Michael McGreevy. Most teams have a Michael McGreevy that is starting at AAA this year. But we are looking at McGreevy because he's our version of that. We got to talk about this. We'll continue talking about this coming up on the other side. Want to hear from you guys as well. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Let's talk a little bit about McGreevy. Starting the year at AAA, it sucks for him. I feel for him. I think the Cardinals are actually doing this the right way. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. From the 6-1, hey, don't feel bad, Alex and T-Bone. BK is always correct. McGreevy is getting screwed, in my opinion. You can't say the Cardinals were correct on keeping Scott up and sending McGreevy down. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line to get involved in the show. YouTube chat is available for you at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Good thing I don't have those views. I view it as they were correct on sending McGreevy down. And in my opinion, I would have held Victor Scott down as well. I know that is not a popular opinion. I am totally aware of that. But I would reassess my situation 6 weeks from now. We get into early May, and I'm looking at where my roster is and what my needs are and if everybody has played according to plan. But I would give that 6 week, to use their own words, runway to the guys that were already on my roster. That means letting Nolan Gorman go out there for 6 weeks and finding out what he is. That means letting Lars Nootbaar go out there for 6 weeks and finding out if he's capable of being a center fielder. And if the answer to these questions, by the way, is no, and they stink, cool. We can adjust accordingly. But for the next 6 weeks, I would have done that. I also, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, I am not somebody that believes that Matthew Liberatore will be a good starter in Major League Baseball. I believe he's a reliever, and I think he's a pretty damn good one at that. I think he's a lefty specialist that comes in the 7th or 8th inning, and that's what his role is going to be long term. However, if the Cardinals as an organization still view him as a starter, I think it was correct to find out now, because this is your last chance. Because while you could do this with McGreevy this year, this is the last time. McGreevy starting, I would say, in like 6 weeks to 2 months, depending on when the changes have to take place. He will be in your rotation, and that's where he's going to be for the next 6 years, probably. Quinn Matthews, starting probably in July. He'll be in your rotation, and he ain't looking back, is what at least the hope is. Tane Kentz, Jerpy, you've got all these guys that are coming through the system right now. They're closer than they are further away. Those guys are eventually going to overtake Matthew Liberatore for those opportunities, probably starting next spring. So this is it. Now is your chance to find out what you have in Liberatore. So if you needed to find that out, if you felt that way as an organization, you do it now. I don't mind him being a part of your rotation. Victor Scott, I wouldn't have done it. I would have started Lars Nootbaar in center field. I would have found out what I have in Nolan Gorman. It sounds like he's the one that is going to get the fewest opportunities because of this. I thought it was going to be Burleson. Turns out it's going to be Gorman. But Alex, when you see some of the moves that they have decided to make over the last 24 hours, we talked a little bit about the pitching side of things especially. How do you feel about McGreevy really getting screwed here, but this being what his role is going to be?
Yeah, I hate the McGreevy thing, but big picture, I mean, I guess I can understand it. My bigger problem more is McGreevy should be in there over a couple of these guys, and I think I'll be even more mad as the season moves on because I'm in the same line of thinking as you. Matthew Liberatore, sure. This is Mo basically saying, I need to make this trade look good. He's a starting pitcher for us. It's not going to work out. What they can't do is move Matz back to the bullpen or the rotation then. That's where McGreevy should be in your rotation if Liberatore doesn't work out. But why I'm going to get mad, my guess is Matz is going to go back into that rotation. I don't like the McGreevy decision. Again, I'll omit to it and I'll say fine. The Matthew Liberatore one, good, because we don't need to keep doing this thing of Matthew Liberatore's a starting pitcher. We traded for him. We traded Randy Arozarena. No, he's not. He's a really good bullpen piece, but please stop playing yo-yo with him. Either put him in there and leave him in there, or put him in the rotation and leave him there. So I hope this carries over into May, where you get 5 or 6 starts for Liberatore and you say, cool, didn't work. You are a bullpen arm, and you will stay as a bullpen arm. That's what I hope happens with the Liberatore decision.
Yeah, so I don't think Liberatore will work as a starter, but I don't mind the organization if they want to say, let's find out what we have. Because, I mean, you're right, BK. This is the last chance you can do this with Liberatore because you've got a ton of arms that are coming that can really start to take this void. So I don't mind that. And when people get upset with the McGreevy one, look, I agree. He probably is one of your 5 best starters right now. But when I take kind of that 1,000-foot view like the organization has to do, I get how they get here, and I like how they got here because this isn't a McGreevy thing, right? I understand he's starting AAA, and yes, I agree he got screwed. But what's the ceiling for Michael McGreevy? Just real quick, what do you guys think?
4th or 5th starter.
What do you think the ceiling is for Quinn Matthews?
2, 3. Probably 3.
That's the guy that they are protecting right now by doing the McGreevy decision. Because if you had McGreevy up and he is in the rotation, and let's say you put Matz and Liberatore to the bullpen, Okay, so if an injury does happen, you either start to play the game of, okay, well, now we got to stretch a guy out at the big leagues, which doesn't work, as we've seen with their Hicks experiment and what they did with Liberatore last year. So then you look down to AAA and go, okay, well, who is our sixth starter at that point? And the answer would probably be Quinn Matthews.
But why can't Matt stretch out and be that guy if an injury happens?
Because what I just said, they don't like doing that. It is tough for those guys to stretch out on the fly.
Aren't they doing it now?
No, not anymore. Not Matt.
Are you talking about when they do the 6-man?
Yeah.
It's just a week that he's going to be off, basically.
Yeah,
He'll probably
should
have
be
an
fine.
appearance at some point over the next 2 weeks that goes 4+ innings.
Yeah, like when Gray gets roughed up on opening day.
And I guess my just assumption is Matt's is going to be back in your rotation by April, no matter what. So
well, I'm not
Are
even
you
talking
saying
about
as a 6-man or as part of a 5?
as part of a 5.
I'm running through the scenario like if you did put McGreevy up in this rotation and injuries do start to occur. The problem then is then you rush Quinn Matthews. And that is my point on what everything stands for with McGreevy. Look, it sucks he's in AAA because I agree he is one of the top 5 stars right now for the Cardinals. But it is better to protect a guy that we just all agreed on has a higher ceiling as a potential number 2 for the organization in the long term than a guy that is a number 4, number 5.
And for people that aren't following, the reason why it is that you're protecting, whether it be Gordon Graceffo, who I don't think is probably in their plans as a major league starter. I think he's probably going to be a reliever down the road, but whatever. The reason why you're really protecting like Tinkins and Quinn Matthews, those would have been the 6th or 7th starters if you had Michael McGreevy at the big league level. There just wasn't an alternative. And part of that is what the offseason was for them. Like they kept Miles Michaelis because they didn't have a choice. They kept Eric Fetty really for this reason, to protect some of their young guys. And I personally would have gone with a trade Eric Fetty approach and then sign Kyle Gibson, who signed over the weekend for a $5 million 1-year contract. T-Bone was on that early on. I think it was a really smart thought by you. I don't know if it's something they even considered. My guess is probably no. They seem to like Eric Fetty, maybe even more than any of us do here in this room. But if you're going to go at it this way, I think this was the right move. I think it's the right approach. I actually think on the pitching side of things, man, they got to a lot of the answers that I would have as well. I would have put Gordon Graceffo in the bullpen. I just think he's going to be a bullpen arm for you long term. I would have started that project right now. See what it looks like for him. But whatever. He's starting out on the AAA level. You add a little bit more depth. He's probably your 7th starter as of today. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to get super up in arms over that. I think a lot of their decisions, actually, I have less of a problem with than most people. Katie brought up the lack of a backup shortstop. I don't really care. It's something that will get a lot of oxygen over the next few days. There's probably people that are very upset about it in our listening audience. T-Bone, a little frustrated about it.
Bring up Barry or whatever his name is.
Barrero?
Yeah, thank you.
Don't even know the guy's name.
I don't have to right now.
He's not. If he was brought up, he would. The goal would be for him to never see the field. That would be the goal. And with somebody like a Michael Ciani, he can have a role on this team. It might not be something that you want to see, but
it's a stupid role.
Pinch running is going to be something that you could use him for. And this is a team that actually could use some pinch running situations this year.
We're going to be pretty slow.
It is also a team that defensively might not be great in right fields when you've got these like 8th and 9th innings. I don't love seeing that because I want Walker to get the at-bats. But especially if it's the 9th inning and you're up by a run, I'm fine with them putting him out there for Jordan Walker. But it's very specific circumstances. That is more than the role that I would expect from Barrero. And the guy that they were going to go with is Jose Fermin, who they have stated publicly and privately time and time again, they do not view him as a shortstop because they think his biggest liability that he brings to the table is what he does defensively. So I don't mind most of their moves. The one that actually I disagree with is the one that has been the most popular with this fan base, which is them bringing Victor Scott onto the opening day roster and mucking up some of the decision-making process for Oli Marmol on a day-to-day basis. This is typically where I paint myself. I find a way to do this. The popular thing with fans is the thing that I think is actually the wrong thing. We'll see how it looks over the next month. But that's the one that I think could get them into the most trouble. The rest of it, I think they're kind of protecting themselves with some of these decisions that they've decided to make.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the problem when they run into this, because like, I'm not going to lie. Look, I get everything that you're saying. It probably was best if they sent Victor Scott down. I'm glad he's here because I think what he did in spring is going to stand. I think he's going to hit. I think he's going to win the center field job, and he's the guy that's going to have that in the long term. So I get everything that you're saying, but I won't lie. I was glad to see him make it. The part that is so frustrating is the fact that it is such a logjam. Somebody's not getting at bats, and by doing this, they get to a spot which we've talked about a lot in the past. We never really talked about it this year because we didn't think we'd have to in the offseason, which was, hey, you got to choose which guy is going to stay and you got to choose which guy is tradable, right? You got to sell high when you got this asset. And now, so you didn't do that, which was fine in theory because of what they were trying, what their stated goal was youth movement, transition year, get these guys plate appearances. Well, now what happens is you're not getting a guy at bats, and he didn't want to choose in the offseason, and what you're doing is hurting that guy's trade value on the market.
Correct.
So, now you just picked, the worst possible path possible, and it's because of this Victor Scott decision, which, again, I like him being up here. What's probably best for the organization is what BK is saying, though, which is, hey, he should have been down in the minors, and using the whole, we got to see it at AAA first. That's not very good players down there, but yeah, you probably should have gone that route.
And somebody on the text line brings this up. Alex, I want to give you the final word on this from the 636. Why does BK hate Victor Scott? I promise you, this has nothing to do with my opinion of Victor Scott. I think he's going to be a good player.
BK hates speed.
I love watching. He is a man that is after my heart with the way that he plays. I love speed. I love defense. I love pop. You have those three things tied into one player in Victor Scott. He is everything that I love about a baseball player. My thing on Victor Scott is what it represents for the roster. It has very little to do with him as a player and more to do with what it means for the rest of your team. Alex, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to remain steadfast, and I love the decision on Victor Scott. I don't think he should have been sent down because I think that's the message you want to send to the organization. Go make changes in the offseason to what we want to see, and when you have success, you earn the right to be on the team. It's what Gorman didn't do from last offseason to this offseason. And really, the big picture that we're talking about all this is Mo didn't do his job. Mo said priority 1, 2, and 3 was moving Nolan Arenado, and I know people will say, well, he couldn't do it. Well, we said this with Torrey Krug, T-Bone. He should have got the job done.
I got told I was playing fantasy
Probably.
So.
Craig Button always says it. Your job is to get it done, whether it's eat more money or find something, but you didn't get that job done. It was either that or you move on from one of these younger pieces, and now you stuck with all of the chess pieces, and there's too many to put on the board.
I think today, one of my biggest takeaways, the Cardinals weren't as committed to Nolan Gorman as they suggested that they were. Because if you were, you make it work. And he is in the lineup as often as humanly possible. They weren't as committed to that. And I do find that to be really interesting. We'll find out if they were right.
Mo's going to take a crowbar to somebody's ankle and open up an opportunity to play,
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, the Blues took advantage of their weak schedule, due in part to both goalies stepping up. Alex has some numbers on that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues took care of business over the weekend, beating the Chicago Blackhawks and the Nashville Predators. They are off tonight. They'll return to action tomorrow when they host the Montreal Canadiens. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 7 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Cardinals will wrap up their spring as they take on the Memphis Redbirds tonight, but they finalize their 26-man roster with Victor Scott making it. He will be the starting center fielder on opening day, and Matthew Liberatore will be the fifth starter as Steven Matz will start the year in a long relief role for the St. Louis Cardinals, and they open up the season on Thursday against the Minnesota Twins. This portion update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The Blues have now won, 6 straight, Alex? 6 consecutive games. They've done so against mostly bad teams on their schedule. That is not to discredit anything they've done. It's something that's been different than what they have done in the past, where they do struggle at times with some of these weaker opponents. Anaheim, Nashville, Chicago, Nashville again. Those are 4 of your last 6 games, and the Blues took care of business in each of those 4. Alex, how have they done it? What has stood out to you about the way that the Blues have been able to get this done over the last 6 or 8 games?
Structure and goaltending. We talked about structure early on, and that's where it feels like they've just got a system right now that works. Even when you pluck guys like Colton Parayko and Oscar Sundqvist and Pavel Buchnevich out, is it the prettiest? No, but they're sticking to what structure is successful, and it's why you saw them win back-to-back 4-1 games with Nashville and Chicago. The other thing for me is goaltending, and we had a lot of discussion about this year, guys, of, do they ride Jordan Binnington? Do they give Joel Hofer more? We wondered if Binnington was going to get a little bit more of the bulk of reps down the stretch. Now they're at the position where I think you just play both goaltenders. The last 6 games, both have played 3, and they've had, 2 sets of back-to-back, so you expected the goalie to get 2 of those, but Hofer in the 3 games that he has played went 3-0 with a .958 save percentage, and Jordan Binnington went 3-0 with a .917 save percentage. And now you are done with back-to-backs. Now you are done with the 3 and 4 games, and now it's just strictly, I like to call it playoff mode, to where you play a game, day off, play a game, day off, all the way up until I think you have 2 days off at the end of this month going into, the last 2.
Saturday going into the Monday, Colorado versus Winnipeg, early April.
Yeah, so like that last week of the season, you get those 2 days off before Seattle and then before Utah. I really look at it now as you have the opportunity to run with both goaltenders, and I don't think they will. I think Hofer gets the start on Tuesday against Montreal. Binnington goes versus Nashville again, and they legitimately go 1-1 the rest of the way, because it's what McKenna told us on Friday. You take advantage of having both goaltenders because you might need one of them in the playoffs at some point, but you also don't fatigue Jordan Binnington, and it's been a luxury for this team because both guys step in and both guys kind of up their game from the previous start that they had.
So I guess my question to you would be this, Alex, and maybe you just answered it based on what you said there. Are you trying to dictate this so that way you get Benner versus Colorado?
No.
You're good with whoever.
I'm good with whoever.
However the schedule lies, we'll just go with them, and we're going back and forth.
I think the first game that now scheduling can change. Do you have a bad game? Do you have to make a different decision? Does Calgary get within 1, and then you get to the must-win territory? Because must-wins, in my opinion, I go to Jordan Binnington. But right now, you're up by 4 on Calgary. Yes, they have 3 games in hand, but being up by 4 gives you the opportunity to just kind of keep what you're doing. The only game that I'm looking at right now that I need to schedule accordingly is Jordan Binnington against Utah, because I think that game is probably going to mean something depending on what happens down the stretch. But no, I would go Hofer against Montreal because they like to do this goalie different look to a team. Binnington played Montreal already this season. Hofer hasn't. So you go Hofer against a really good Montreal team. I don't know if I like Nashville seeing Binnington twice in 1 week.
Either way, you've seen one of them in the last 10 days.
So honestly, you could go
because
2 for Hofer.
Just got him last week.
Hofer has played Colorado fairly well this season. So yeah, you're at the spot right now, luxury-wise. Both goalies are playing the same. The team is playing the same. You could go 1-1 the rest of the way, which, in my opinion, is advantageous because when you get to the playoffs, now Binnington's not taking the bulk of the load to get to the playoffs for you, so he's rested. And then if something happens, which I don't expect it to, but if Binnington's not on his game, Hofer's ready to step in because he's gotten the reps in playoff mode.
All right, last thing that I wanted to get to here. So Dalibor Dvorsky up this weekend, had his first game yesterday. Looked fine, looked solid, had a really good play on the power play, quick pass over, ended up leading to a goal. Didn't get the assist on it, but a good play nonetheless. How do you think he is incorporated into this team the rest of the way, Alex? What's the plan with him?
I mean, a lot of this is riding on Pavel Buchnevich's injury because from what they're saying, if it's an injury or an illness, whatever it might be, I don't know if he's going to be playing tomorrow. We'll have to wait to find out. So to me, Dvorsky's going to be here until you know more on Pavel Buchnevich. My expectation is tomorrow, Texier is the one that comes out and Sundqvist goes back in, and you've got Sundqvist and Dvorsky. My gut tells me the Blues are going to send Dvorsky back down at some point and not keep him up here when Buchnevich comes back because not that he's not ready, but it's very obvious they were cautious with him last night. He only exclusively started in the offensive zone. They did not start him in the defensive zone yesterday. Do some practices help? My tinfoil on this, though, BK, and I might be thinking with my heart more than my gut here, is they keep him for the rest of this season because he cannot play more than 9 games this season because otherwise,
the NHL level.
Yes, otherwise his entry-level contract starts this year and you burn a year. They're not going to do that. They've got 10 games left. He's already played 1. He's not going to play all of them. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if he's sitting up in the press box for at least 1 or 2 games, sitting next to the coaching staff. You want him in the practices from now on. Now, I don't know how many practices they're going to have because of all of the games that they've played, and really they're going into rest mode. But I want him to work with Steve Ott in the faceoffs for the rest of the season. I want him doing the same routine that Zach Bolduc's been doing with Claude Julien. And if I can get him 7 games down the stretch of playoff action, then he does what Zach Bolduc did last year. And you remember that interview we had with him. Bolduc was straightforward. He said, I know what I need to do in the offseason to get ready for next year. And he did it. I want that for Dvorsky. Do I think it's going to happen? No. My guess is they'll probably send him down once Pavel Buchnevich is healthy. I hope that he stays up here for the rest of the way and honestly plays in 7 of the final 10 games.
Yeah, I wonder if they platoon him, basically. And what I mean by that is normally like baseball, you hear platoon, and it's like, all right, lefty, righty, whatever. Just go back. The way that you're using this, like, have one paired to one goalie, the other paired to the other. And I'm talking about Sundqvist and Dvorsky. And the reason why is just because, like, Sonny's clearly running on fumes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard JR talk about this, where he's like walking around the locker room after these games, and he looks like a bionic man because he's just ice, just taped to every square inch of his body.
The dude's body has gone through the ringer these last 5 years.
None of us thought he was going to be playing this often this year. None of us did coming into the season. And yet he's found a way to do it. So down the stretch, if you believe Sonny to be an important player for you in the postseason, and I think they clearly do, hey, man, getting Dvorsky a little bit of playing time down the stretch and having him play in, maybe it's 4 of the last 10 games, so he gets 5 games down the stretch for you, it's not a bad deal. Gets to play in what are effectively playoff-style games. Maybe he gets the next game against Nashville. So you're going up against the exact same opponent, and you can see, comparatively speaking, what those shifts looked like for you. How did you perform against the same caliber of team on the other side? You get Sundqvist in there against Colorado. Maybe he gets one of those games, talking about Dvorsky, against Detroit or Pittsburgh. Sonny back in there again against Colorado and Winnipeg and Edmonton. Dvorsky gets one of that game against Seattle, and boom, back to Sonny for that game against Utah. Yeah. The best teams that you're going up against, Sonny's in there. But you spell him a little bit to get that opportunity for him to get some much-needed rest at this point in the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean, and even when, like, there would be a couple of games I'd like to have Sonny in the lineup with Dvorsky because Montgomery's talked about how Sundqvist has helped Zach Bolduc out so much this year. But if that happens, Sundqvist is on the wing. And then so maybe it's less wear and tear on a guy that's not playing the centerman position. 2 things real quick, BK, to clear up. One, somebody asked if playoff games count towards the 9. No, they do not. Playoff games are different than regular season games. And somebody said he's already in the AHL, so he's burned a year. No, AHL games do not burn a year of the entry-level contract. It is only the NHL games. You have to play 9 or more, and the first year of the entry level is burned.
There you go. Somebody else, last thing here, Alex, on this, and we're going to double up going into the next segment. We'll be talking about Oli Marmol and his approach to the lineup here in just a little bit. How's Jimmy Snuggerud playing to this?
Snuggerud's on this team no matter what when his college career is done. He plays this Thursday. They got the bracket. I think he plays Massachusetts, and then he plays on Saturday if they win Thursday's game. As soon as he loses, he's done. And then it comes down to, does he sign the contract with the Blues? My gut tells me yes, and when he signs, we've talked about this before, he's in and he's playing.
That to me changes things for Dvorsky.
That's when, in my opinion, Dvorsky will be sent down. Unless they just decide to keep him here and have him be around the team, which is a very realistic possibility because the Thunderbirds are falling out of the playoff race right now. Yeah, they've. I was texting with their play-by-play guy, and he's like, man, the Matt Kessel call-up by the Blues has a ripple effect. They have been awful defensively. So they're starting to fall out of it a little bit. Do you keep them up here and just be a part of a playoff race? But when Snuggerud is up here, that does change what they decide to do with Dalibor Dvorsky. Now, this doesn't mean that Snuggerud plays immediately. Like, they're probably going to want to get a practice in for Snuggerud to see kind of what the game plan is, because AHL to NHL, they run the same system. College to NHL is very different. But he's going to sign if he signs, and he will play. Yeah. The plus minus for Dvorsky is bad. I had Smith on yesterday, and I go, people look at the plus minus, and he goes, let me caution people, plus minus for the Thunderbirds has been bad because they have been giving up 9 goals a game these last few.
The Blues and the Thunderbirds had reverse seasons.
Yeah.
The Thunderbirds right now are on a 6-game losing streak. Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Their last, let me give you the scores of these games. 9-4, 8-3, 4-1, 4-2, 4-1, 4-1. It is literally a mirror image of what's going on with the Blues right now, but yikes. So not ideal.
They had to go out there and sign like 2 AHL free agent players to play because they lost all of their defensemen. So they've dealt with injuries. They're dealing with call-ups. It's typically what happens at this time of the year for American Hockey League teams. So that's why part of me is like, man, do you just keep them up here and just feel the NHL for a playoff race, because the Thunderbirds might not be in it anymore.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, how is Oli Marmol going to approach the everyday lineup for the Cardinals this year, and how do you want him to approach that? We'll talk about it next year on BK and Ferrario.
T-Bone here to tell you about my friends at DraftKings Pick 6. It's been a wild tournament so far, as we haven't seen a lot of upsets. But hey, you don't have to worry about that with DraftKings Pick 6. You can focus on player stats. That way you can rack up big cash prizes with my friends at DraftKings Pick 6. And Pick 6 is available in most states, including here in Missouri. Look, I was playing it over the weekend while watching the Illini's games, and I hit when they were playing against Xavier with big games from Yakachonis, Will Riley, and Isevich. I took all 3 guys for plus or more than 12.5 points, and all of them ended up hitting, and I got $10 on that. I ended up putting $60 in my pocket. So turn your college basketball knowledge into cash today. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use my code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus award is non-drawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So everybody's excited to see Victor Scott in the lineup on a day-to-day basis. I don't blame you for that. I think it's going to be exciting.
Not everybody.
Everybody other than Brandon Kiley.
He should be in Memphis.
Is excited to see Victor Scott on a day-to-day basis. And again, I understand it. I don't blame you for it. Victor Scott is a very fun player to watch. However, it does make things more complicated. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So how does Oli Marmol handle this? I remember back in 2023, T-Bone, you probably remember this. I had my nerdy graph that showed how they could make the playing time work. And ultimately, they said, throw your graph out of here. You can't make it work because these are humans, not machines. It's the old TLR quote. And guys got out of whack, man. Like, they didn't have the playing time. They didn't have the ability to go out there day to day without thinking about, okay, if I go 0 for 3, I'm out of the lineup tomorrow. It put too much pressure on some of them. And ultimately, they had to simplify things. They sent Jordan Walker down to AAA, and they decided these are our guys. We're going with them every single day. Well, Alex, you have two options here if you're Oli Marmol. Option number one is that we are going with our guys, and we're going to trust them every single day, no matter who the opposing pitcher is and no matter how they're playing day to day. And we'll reevaluate it in a month, and we'll see where we're at. That option means there's probably one of Alec Burleson or Nolan Gorman that is out of the lineup basically every day. Option two, you try to make this thing work with somebody serving as a super utility guy. That could be Nolan Gorman. It could be Brendan Donovan. But somebody's getting an off day every day. And you cycle through it over the course of the week. One day, I think this is going to happen because we've seen it in the past. Nolan Arenado's probably going to get 1 day off a week. He's getting up there in age. On those days, I would assume Nolan Gorman is going to be starting at third base for you. Maybe 1 day a week, you get Lars Nootbaar a day off because the guy can't stay healthy. Maybe 1 day a week, you get Jordan Walker a day off because he needs to be working on his outfield stuff with John Jay. This is what they've done in the past with him. In the past, it's been a DH day, but you have a DH now. So maybe those days he's truly off. That's 3 days a week that I've already done, and it doesn't sound crazy to get those guys off days. How do you think they do this? How do they massage the lineup on a day-to-day basis to get these guys the at-bats that they need, Alex?
Man, I think there are two different answers for that. How do I think they will do it? I think they're going to do that latter one you just described. I think they're going to have a super utility and somebody's going to have a day off every single day. How I think they should, I think you should stick with a lineup and somebody's the odd man out. And unfortunately, this is the big boy business, and you're going to have to put your big boy pants on. Do you get to play for a month? No, you don't. Maybe an injury pops up. Maybe something happens where you do get some opportunities. You have to wait for that opportunity, and when you get it, you run with it. But I think in terms of the big picture here, when you're trying to get an established core and at-bats every single day for these guys, you got to let them play. You can't put them out there and then pull them out the next day because that screams what happened to Colton Wong. That screams oh my gosh, I can't go 0 for 3 as soon as I do. 0 for 1, now it's going to be 0 for 2. And now they become a head case and there's no development. There's got to be development this year for a lot of these guys. So I set the lineup and I go with it. And one of, you mentioned it, Burleson or Gorman, unfortunately, you get to be the odd man out for a couple of weeks, and we'll reassess it in about 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think they're going to go through that like rotating door of trying to figure everything out with a super utility guy, which is odd to say when Gorman's not really super utility, but whatever. I think that's the path that they're going to go towards because I still think that though they're not in on maybe Gorman being a guy that they have to get everyday at-bats for, I still do think there is some part of it of where they want to get him at-bats, to where they want to get him some plate appearances. Maybe that's not starting 5 of 6 days or 6 of 7 like we had originally thought. Maybe it's like 3 of 6. I still think they're going to get him at-bats. I don't think that's beneficial for the team, though, because I think you fall right back into 2023, which we talked about with Katie, which we've brought up multiple times now at this point. You get to the spot where you just keep rotating these guys in and out, and they can't ever find a rhythm. And sure, they may struggle, and then they have to worry about what Alex is saying, which is, okay, am I going to be out of the lineup today because I'm not hitting? And it's one thing to say, well, those guys are pros. They should be able to handle it. As we see, it's not that way. Baseball is a game of rhythm and trying to find a rhythm.
And certainly here in St. Louis, people have been making
100%.
the case for that over the last few years, where they will say Ollie's problem is he doesn't stick with the same lineups.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he really fell victim to that really only in 23.
Agreed.
I think he got away from it pretty good in 24, and I don't think he had that issue in 22. He did platooning, but that's different in my opinion. But I fear they're going to get stuck in this spot to where they're going to look at guys and go, well, man, Gorman, Burley, Walker, they're not hitting. Well, why are they not hitting? Maybe they're just not the guys we envision. Or maybe they're just not in a rhythm because they keep getting yanked in and out of the lineup. And that's why I would say they've got to pick a lineup. And I know that means one of Gorman or Burley's potentially out of it. I'm sorry, man, but once you said Victor Scott is on this roster, you put one of those guys on the bench for about a 3 to 4 week stretch. And that's just the way it should be, but I don't think they're going to do that.
That's probably where I would go. But it goes back to, like, there's two different conversations that are happening simultaneously, and I almost feel like I have to state the first one first. I would not have brought Victor Scott up to the big league roster because it forces you into the conversation that we are now having. But it's a sunk cost. This is their decision. So operating off of the information that we have available to us, what would I do? I would say Nolan Gorman's going to be the odd man out. Here's the thing. If, and we're getting a bunch of these texts, guys, they need to trade one of Burleson or Gorman. They need to trade one of Burleson or Gorman. Okay. What's the response going to be if Gorman then goes on somewhere else and strikes out, 28% of the time, but we're not seeing those strikeouts in person anymore. Now that's happening in, Houston or New York or wherever, right? Those strikeouts are out of sight, out of mind.
If he goes to New York.
Huh?
If he goes to New York, he will hit that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not seeing the strikeout numbers. You're not feeling that on a day-to-day basis. But what you do see is the fact that on the back of the baseball card, he gets to the end of the season and has 32 home runs and let's call it 78 ribbies. He's batting .230 with a .310 on-base percentage, but he's got all of the power that you were looking for. How do you feel about that? How do you think a typical, the majority of this fan base would feel if that is what ends up happening this year?
Pissed.
And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
But at what point do you say he wasn't going to do it in St. Louis?
After this year would be my answer to that. I personally view it as, so far with Nolan Gorman, you had one average season, which was his first year, and it was limited opportunities. One pretty good season given his age. Age 23, 20% above league average, 27 homers in 119 games. Dude, that's a good season. And then last year was terrible. So I would like to see more of that. And I know I feel like I'm alone in this way, in this situation right now. I think the majority of our text line is done with Nolan Gorman. They're just done. And they don't want to see the strikeouts anymore, and they're sick of it because he doesn't hit for average. He strikes out all the time. I don't care about the home runs because it's so long between when you have those homers and when you don't homer. It's a bunch of nothing where you're a net negative in the lineup day to day. And I get that. But, dude, those homers matter. They really matter. And if this team wants to get good again, having that guy in your lineup in October is a necessity. And if you don't have the power coming from Nolan Gorman, where is it coming from, guys? Where are those home runs going to come from for this team? I don't see it.
It'd have to be Walker. I mean, Walker will have to fill the void. It'll have to be two guys, honestly. I mean, it'll have to be Walker and, I don't know, you get extra couple home runs if Nootbaar stays healthy. Like, it's going to be a, what would be the word there? It had to be a group
By the
effort.
aggregate.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's all from the right side. The players that you're mentioning are right-handed hitters, and that's valuable. We've seen it time and time and time again, and we talk about it every postseason. You know where the power really comes from in the postseason? Lefties. Lefties are the ones that righties see a massive drop in their numbers from the regular season into the postseason. Lefties see it actually uptick a little bit. Nolan Gorman could be that guy that helps you in that regard. I guess maybe you think it's going to be Burleson. Maybe you think it's going to be Donovan or Nootbaar. I suppose that's possible. Maybe J.J. Weatherholt takes this and runs with it. Also possible. Gorman's the guy that profiles best in that regard. I would have done it for one more year. One more year, see what it looks like, and if it fails spectacularly, now you're done. And you wash your hands of it and say, Donovan's going to be our second baseman for now, and Weatherholt eventually becomes that guy for us. But for right now, I would have done it. They decided to go in a different direction. I do not envy the position that Oli Marmol is in, though, because no matter what he does, if these guys don't hit, he's going to be the one that gets the arrows coming to him because he's not going to have the answers. Because they might not exist in this lineup.
Then Heim's going to dump the body. Oh, brutal.
Dude, it's
Welcome
tough.
to being a manager.
Oh,
Welcome
brutal.
to be a manager slash coach as a pro
I do feel bad for Oli.
in pro sports.
It's a brutal place to be if you're him.
And it's the second time in 4 years.
And he's got like this, he's getting pulled in two different directions. Like early on in the season, if you're up 5-3, it's the seventh inning. And Walker came up, he's like, there's 6 batters between him and his spot coming back up in the order. What do you do?
He's probably pulled.
Is that the right call?
How many at-bats has he had already?
He's got 3.
Has he done anything in those at-bats?
Oh, home
It's
run.
the average day.
Huge bomb.
Got a single took a quality at bat, ended up being a line drive out to second, and struck out once.
Pull him. I got my at bats already. We're talking about one at bat. We're talking about 3 innings.
But what if that happens 3 times over the course of that week?
That means
it slowly starts to add up to a lot of at-bats.
And eventually you're like, man, he's getting pulled. Look at all these at-bats. The reason I bring this up is because if you're trying to win, Alex is right. You pull him. You put Michael Ciani in the game.
Well,
it's the right call.
And once again, welcome to the overall message. Are we trying to win or are we trying to develop?
What if Libby is solid but not spectacular, and Matt's and his opportunities when they go to the 6-man rotation is good?
Well, we got plenty of Libbies, so I'd say move on from Libby.
These are the kinds of things where it becomes a question of, are we trying to win? Is that the North Star for us, or is it about the runway? Already, we're seeing the runway shrink for certain guys. It'll be interesting.
Is it just me, or is anybody else getting sick of the ifs?
Yeah.
But that's
I'm used to it.
Every baseball team has it. Every baseball team.
I guess I'm getting sick of the ifs for guys that we've been saying ifs for about 4 years.
If we didn't have ifs, man, welcome to covering the Dodgers.
And even then, what happens if the rotation isn't healthy?
Yeah, or Mookie Betts is like 150 pounds.
And the answer is he still win 100 games. He figured out.
Still are the best team in the NL West.
Every team has this.
I will say this. How will we feel about this if they go with this lack of runway approach? Because clearly they want to win. The North Star is winning right now. But let's say they're a month in and they realize it's not working. They go on I don't remember what they were in 23, like 10 and
24.
10 and 24. Let's say they are that. And offense isn't hitting because of what we're talking about. Guys are going in and out of the lineup. They can't figure things out. Libby sucks as a 5th starter. And then they say, you know what? It's pivot. This next month here is when we pivot and we finally give the runway. Yeah. We option somebody that's not hitting, or we pull somebody that's not hitting, and then they go to that spot. Would you be okay with that? Because I think right now I think it's fair to wonder. I think it's fair for them to say we want to win because this division sucks, and we're going to try it right now, and because we want people in the seats. Because we need to bring in that money. Because right now, what our biggest issue is we don't know the future of our RSN. And right now, you don't want to be here. And you know what? That's fair for the Cardinals fans.
I think that's probably what their North Star is right now. If they were to be honest, I think they are trying to win.
And I
think that's a vicious cycle to get in, though, because you're going to keep doing it year after year after year and not develop. You're never going to get back to the established window if you keep doing this.
I think that's fair. But if you do this, again, I don't mind it, long as you're willing to admit and kind of, quote-unquote, pull the plug a month in if it doesn't work and say, okay, now it's about runway.
I do think they got to get slapped in the face, though, to where it's like, hey, you guys aren't good. Let them play.
And that's the thing. I think the little more likely outcome, they're like 12 and 14.
Oh, that might be worse.
That's worse.
I know, because they're not going to get slapped in the face. That is where it's, okay, we're kind of in it. We can kind of believe that we're still a part of this thing. And then they end up at like, so 34 games is where they were 10 and 24. You're 16 and 18.
Well, I guess here's the question, though. Are you 16 and 18 and Libby's pitching well, Victor Scott's hitting really well, Burleson's playing? Because if you're that record and it's Nolan Arenado and Wilson Contreras carrying you, that's a problem.
It is, but ultimately it just comes down to, like, you're not great. You're not a great baseball team. And the North Star is winning, but you're not winning enough to really make it meaningful. And now you're stuck. And that's where the Cardinals are. They're stuck right now. And we'll see. They've got some really interesting decisions to make over the course of the next couple of months. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, what's the explanation for the lack of upsets in the NCAA tournament? We'll talk about it here on BK and Ferrario. Alex had an interesting weekend over on the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois. We were out at Max in downtown Alton. Alex put down a 10-leg parlay, fell one leg short. It was excruciating. Had the over. It ended up going under. But for this week, I've got a few picks for you. Alex, write these down. Duke -9. BYU versus Alabama. The over-under is set at 175 in this game. Just an outrageous over-under, and I'm taking the over. Then I'm taking Texas Tech minus the points and Florida minus the points. It's been a chalk tournament thus far. I think that continues this week. That's my 4-leg parlay. Put down $10, win $125 over on the Circa Sports app.
Let me tell you, Circa Sports app, it broke my heart over the weekend, but the reason I laid that bet down was because I was bringing in the most money possible, and I was right there. I was 3 points away, but I do that bet on Circa Sports because they're not limiting you based off of your winnings, and they're making sure that you keep the most money possible compared to other sports books that don't do that. So download the Circa Sports app today, Circa Sports Illinois, and get set for all of the action this week. If you or some of you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
From 0-5 in the SEC to the Sweet 16. Arkansas and John Calipari moving on to San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, John Calipari, of course, the coach of the team that is this year's Cinderella. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. For the first time since 2017, there will not be a team seated lower than number 12 that made it to Saturday of the first weekend. Only 5 double-digit seeds, Alex, advanced over the first 2 days. It was 2 number 10s, an 11, and a 12. One of those number 12s, which was Colorado State, was the favorite at the tip-off in their opening round game. It tied for the fewest first-round wins by double-digit seeds since 2007. It was not the year for the Cinderella. In fact, it really wasn't the year for the underdog. We have seen Chalk City since the opening round, and it has just continued to be that way in the NCAA tournament. Alex, what do you attribute that to? Do you think something is leading to this, or is it a one-off? We're going to look back on this and say that was a weird year. We've seen stuff like this before in the NCAA tournament where suddenly you're getting all the ones in the Final Four. But what do you make of what we have seen thus far with the lack of upsets?
Part of me feels like it's a one-off, but I was reading an article earlier today on CBS Sports, and they were talking about, is it the transfer portal? Which seems like an odd question because typically we talk about the transfer portal helping out those teams that you typically don't talk about in the football side of things, right? Like the last couple of years, we've talked about the transfer portal.
Balances the power for teams like Mizzou, and it takes away some of the depth from a team like Ohio State, Alabama, etc.
You're bringing in guys like quarterbacks that could come in and change the dynamic of your team. But maybe for basketball, because there's more guys or there's less roster spots and there's fewer guys that are making impact on games, you're seeing a lot of these transfers from the lower schools where they're the top dog going to different schools. So that's the only thing that I can at least think of, but I actually wonder if it's just the one-off, and I think we go back to seeing some of those Cinderella stories next year.
That's where I am. I think we're just at a one-off because like some of the things that I thought about when this question has been asked is, oh, well, maybe it's more of the star powers at the bigger schools. Well, no, that's always been the case. Oh, well, maybe some of the smaller schools like didn't hit on their transfer portal marks. Maybe that's the case, but we've seen that happen in the past. I just think the answer is I think it's a one-off. I think what you've seen is that every year you typically get a multitude of upsets and some Cinderellas, and what happens is a team gets hot. And I think just what the answer was this year was none of those Cinderellas got hot. A lot of these smaller teams did not come in. There was outside of Yale, and I think there was maybe one more, and I can't remember who it was, weren't great three-point shooting teams. And that's kind of typically the success when you look at a team to go on a run. And Yale hung around with A&M for a while, but they eventually pulled away from them. I just view this as a one-off. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to become a problem for years to come because it is college basketball. We see these teams end up going through streaks where they go cold for a game. That's all it takes for you to get shocked by somebody like a Norfolk State, for example. So I don't think this is – I think this is a one-off.
I think it's a one-off, though, to this degree. Like this being as many of the top seeds that advanced, maybe this is going to be considered out of the norm starting in the next year or two. I do think we will see more of this in the future, though, and it's twofold, maybe three. It has to do with NIL and the transfer portal, but allow me to at least explain this perspective. So Yale last year was one of the underdog stories, right? They were one of the teams that people got excited watching. They pulled off an upset in the NCAA tournament. Their best player, his name was Danny Wolf. They were the team that last year ended up beating Auburn in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Danny Wolf was their best player. He was a 7-foot center. Danny Wolf now plays for Michigan. Why? Because he gained notoriety last year with how he performed at Yale, got the opportunity to go for a massive NIL package to go play for Michigan. So that is a player that was at the lower level, the mid-major level, that took advantage of the transfer portal and NIL to go transfer up. I think that's happening a lot across college basketball now, where you will see guys that have a good year, and it was really just the first good year for Danny Wolf. As a freshman, he didn't really play much. Take advantage of that good year and then transfer up. What used to happen with some of these mid-major programs is they would be able to build around a core group of players. Think about some of the teams that you've seen that go on these tournament runs. They're typically very experienced. It's juniors and seniors going up against what used to be freshmen and sophomores from these Power 5 programs because they were all trying to build the same way around these one-and-dones. Well, now teams have changed their building philosophy. If you're a team like Missouri or Kentucky or Florida or whomever, you're building in every possible way. Yes, you need the freshmen, but a lot of those guys aren't really seeing the court now. Now it's the guys you're plucking from the mid-major program. That's a starter for you. You've had another guy that's been in your program for 3 years. That's a starter for you. A transfer you got after their sophomore year that's now a senior. That's a starter for you. So you're getting all of these. And now it's the Power 5 programs that are as experienced as the mid-major programs, and in some cases, more so. So I think that's leading to this as well. I think you are seeing some of this, like the talent pool has flattened. I don't think it's necessarily like Kentucky, Memphis, the Cal teams. Those used to be like all of the McDonald's All-Americans. They were going to 3 separate schools.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing them separating across. Maryland, great freshman class. It's part of why they are where they're at right now. But I think there's a lot that has led to this, and I don't think it's going away. I do believe that you will start to see more of the power consolidating on the Big Ten and the SEC, much like it has already in college football. I think college basketball is trending more in that direction than what it's been in previous years.
Yeah, and I hope that's not the case because, I mean, when you think about March Madness, what makes March Madness great is the Cinderella story. It's not the classic 1 versus 1 seed in the national championship, or maybe that surprise 3 seed that gets to the Final Four. It is these underdogs, right? Like you asked a question early on in I think it was in our third segment today, 11:30. Like, how have you felt about March? It has been stale. Like, there's been some good basketball games. For the most part, they haven't really been close. A lot of these games have really opened up. And it's because you're not – one, the Cinderellas didn't pull off many upsets. And even when you didn't get a Cinderella, you're kind of 6 through 8 seeds, looking at you, Illinois, didn't hold their own when they got into their second-round matchups. Sorry, not Mizzou. They didn't make the second round. So I hope that's not the case. And I think you're going to see still some of these smaller schools because if they don't make the tournament – I think, and this sounds weird to say, I feel like they're going to have a better chance of holding their talent because even some of these teams still had a lot of veteran guys. Like Drake was loaded. I think they had 4 guys that were graduate seniors.
But that's in part because they transferred in from D2.
Right.
If their coach stayed and they had not been at D2 previously, Drake's players are getting crazy offers this offseason. And Drake's players, some of them at least, are probably transferring away, and Drake isn't the same team next year that they are. Now, their coach went to Iowa, so they're just all going to transfer with him. They're going to follow him to Iowa, and they're going to get that same opportunity with their current coach. But I think Drake is the poster child of what I'm talking about here, where that team could have been decimated this offseason via the portal. Because there's vultures around all of these teams that are potentially going on these runs, and you get excited about some of the players that you're seeing. It's like, oh, okay, that guy's going to be at Duke, and that guy's going to be at Michigan, and that guy's going to be at Kansas. Congratulations on your 1 year. Hopefully you took advantage of it, because now it's over, and you got to start all over again. And hopefully you hit on some of these guys that are transferring down.
That's what I was just about to say. Now it's almost flipped script, right? And these schools won't ever be able to recruit the 5-star McDonald's athlete to come and play for them. Like Yakachonis would never go to Drake and play basketball.
Sure.
But that's now where they have to find their success. Is they've now they won't be the vulture. They'll be someone that has to just kind of take in and really take a 5-star that didn't get playing time that said, well, screw this. I'm seeing you go pick up Drake's team, for example, and I'm not going to be a guy that's going to be getting playing time because I'm a sophomore. I'm going to go ball for one of these other small schools. So that's where the script has really changed. I still think with that in mind, I still think even if it is young talent, better talent will ultimately end up prevailing. And I still think you'll see small schools be able to do that. It'll just be a lot harder to accomplish.
Last thing that I wanted to get on this, and I think it's an interesting discussion because it's like the big story right now in college basketball. I think Illinois is going to be a flashpoint for this during the offseason because in previous iterations of college basketball, Illinois' dudes all probably go to the NBA. Like all of them leave, right? I'll be really curious to see what happens with them. Can they keep them in college basketball with a significant NIL package? That is another thing that has changed. Where previously, you would have assumed Yakachonis is 100% gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still there, but yeah.
Ivicic is probably 100% gone. And that may be the case. We'll see, though. Will Riley probably would have been gone in a previous iteration of college basketball where he couldn't have made money at the college level. He might be back now. So that is something that I do think matters as well, is you get these teams that have, fringe top 20 picks that instead of going to the NBA and making a couple $1,000,000 or maybe potentially even heading down to the G League next year, they come back to college basketball for $1 million at the college level, expand their game, get a little bit better. They're the big man on campus. They potentially go on another run next year in the NCAA tournament, and that helps your team as well. So
that's where the NIL is. I mean, it has been a good thing in my opinion because it does keep these guys around because there's more money and they know their probably pro career is going to die as soon as you go to the G League. And now it gets fans even more invested in that college team because they've got the returning players that try and go for one more run.
A guy that comes to mind for me is Phil Pressey. If you remember him from Mizzou. 2013 has a pretty decent season, but it's a down year compared to what it was in 2012. He could have come back for another season at Mizzou and probably would have had a huge year that year. I don't think Phil Pressey was ever going to have like some crazy NBA career. He's just too small. But he ended up having a few years in the league, played for the Celtics. He could have come back for another year. And under the current NIL landscape, my guess is Phil Pressey probably returns in 2014. But he didn't. Ended up trying his shot at the NBA and has a short career in the league. But could have been a little different if that had taken place in 2025 instead of 2013. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We continue our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals with number 5 coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Classic Air Care. Look, now that it's starting to get warmer outside, it's going to be that time of the year where you kick on the air conditioner unit, and you have an old one. That's typically when issues arise. This is why you need to call Classic Air Care and be a part of their maintenance agreement, because what they do twice a year before you flip on that air conditioner in the spring, summertime, before you hit the heater in the wintertime, Classic Air Care comes out. They check the unit, they clean it, they fine-tune it to make sure that it's good to go once you officially turn that on. And this is the best part. When issues arise, because of course they're going to happen with that big unit, you call them out, you tell them what's going on, you get priority scheduling because you're a part of the maintenance agreement. Get their incredible customer service, the knowledgeable technicians that come out to take care of your older unit. I've been using them since 2016, since I've owned a home. My dad's been using them for the last 30 years. Call them today, schedule online. Just do me a favor and tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Montreal Canadiens. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario. Then puck drop at 7 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Cardinals opening day will be on Thursday when they host the Minnesota Twins. 3:15 will be first pitch for that one, as Sonny Gray will get the start for St. Louis. Pablo Lopez will be on the mound for the Twins. This Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
We continue our countdown of the 20 most important players for the 2025 season with number 5 on the list. It is Lars Nootbaar. I had him at number 3. Alex had him at number 7. T-Bone had him at number 4. Lars Nootbaar to me...
everybody.
You'll see once you get to my top 3.
Lars Nootbaar to me is one of the very few players on the team that has a real chance to be a star. And I know people are so beyond sick of hearing that.
Like Ohtani?
No, not like Ohtani. I'm going to read you what the average season per 162 games has been for Lars Nootbaar over the last 3 years. Okay, Alex? A 250 batting average, a 350 on base percentage, and a 425 slug. That's good for a 775 OPS with an average of 30 doubles and 20 homers per year. That'd be pretty damn good. However, he doesn't stay healthy. And that's the biggest issue that people have with Lars Nootbaar, and he doesn't hit for average. Those are the two things. Doesn't stay healthy, doesn't hit for average.
Those are not a good duo.
And when you have those two things, it goes against you, and you become late career Matt Carpenter in a lot of people's minds. So I bring up Matt Carpenter's name for a reason, actually. I look at his 2017 season and what he was able to do for the Cardinals then. He was 31 years old at the time. He hit .240. He got on base 38% of the time, was about 25% above league average. And I think to myself, man, could Lars Nootbaar do that? Some kind of version of the 2017 Matt Carpenter season, but instead of having below average defense wherever you're playing, it's above average defense with some positives on the base paths as well. And now you've just got a really well-rounded, solid baseball player. I think he can. I don't know what Cardinals fans would think about that kind of a season. Like, would you be happy with that? Would that live up to what your expectations are, given how the organization has sold you what Lars Nootbaar could be? I don't know. I feel like I'm out of the loop on some kind of an inside joke on what Nootbaar was supposed to be, because I never bought into that. So I don't know. I don't know where people's realistic expectations are at this point with Lars Nootbaar.
I mean, I personally never really felt like I was sold that Lars Nootbaar is going to be this star. I've always kind of thought that he's going to be one of those complementary pieces that we always talk about. Looking at my list, with the information we know now, I wish I could have flipped him with Nolan Gorman, because I had Gorman a little higher. We'll get to him in a few days.
Oh, boy.
But the reason that I put Lars Nootbaar where I did and had him below some players is, once again, we're looking at the now and the big picture. Beyond this year, I don't know if Lars Nootbaar is a part of this team. I think this is another one of those guys that they're giving him, this is your last straw. Go out there and prove us you're going to be a piece of this core moving forward. And I'm not sold on it, because if you can't stay healthy, we saw this with Tyler O'Neill also, at some point you just say, nope, it's just not going to happen.
Let me ask this as a follow-up to that. I'm curious your thoughts on this, T-Bone. If Noot is just what he's been, like he's the exact same player, nothing about what he does when he's on the field changes, but he stays healthy and plays 140 games this year, what do you do with him? Is that a player you're building around? Is that a player that you're trading? What does that mean for Lars Nootbaar? Because let's talk about the actual player for a second and set aside the injuries, which are obviously the elephant in the room. Everybody understands that. But if he stays healthy and he's the same guy, now what?
Man, that's a tough question. You don't have other outfielders that result in what you're hoping Lars Nootbaar is. And if you get that from him, I think you probably stick with it and you build around it. I don't think you're overpaying that player. It's not going to be like he's going to get too pricey for you, but I think that's the mainstay in your left field spot right now, because in this scenario, you wonder if Nolan Gorman's probably the odd one out. Well, now your second base is filled and you're talking about finding reps for Burleson and Donovan, and who knows what that future is going to look like. So I think if I get 140 games and you do what you've done, yeah, you're probably a part of this team moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even think it's close. I think you keep him. If he can just does what he is and he stays healthy, because every baseball team could use a guy that's 15% above league average. So, and he's left-handed. So I think, if he just stays healthy and just produces like he has been, no question for me, I'm keeping that guy, because that's something that you get rid of it, you're immediately looking for it. And now it's not as hard to replace as if like you traded away a superstar, for example, but you're still going to be seeking for somebody that gets on base, has a little pop from the left side that's 15% above league average.
I guess the reason I hesitated and why I felt like it was such a hard decision is, what does Donovan and Burleson do? Because
Donovan's your second baseman in that scenario. Until Weatherholt.
As I say, and then Weatherholt, and then you're down the path. And then that's why, because if Burleson bat is better than Nootbaar's this year, and Donovan's bat is better than Nootbaar's this year, then you're looking at this saying, cool, Nootbaar, great player for us, and he stayed healthy, but where does he fit into the lineup? Because we need at-bats for Burleson and Donovan every single day.
I think that's going to be the thing that is maybe most interesting about Nootbaar's season, is what does his season mean for everybody else? To me, my hope on this year is that Lars Nootbaar starts out as your everyday leadoff hitter, and he's just there every single day. And you put him at leadoff and you put him in left field, and that's where he is. And you figure out what that looks like for this season. And if that is something that you're willing to build around, cool. And if not, you make that decision at the end of the year. But him, to me, I thought Gorman was in this scenario as well, but it's a true like decision time kind of a season, because there's only 2 years left on his contract, guys. He has 2 years of arbitration left, and then he's a free agent. After 3 years this year, if you include this season, but 2 years after this season, and then you've got to make a decision on him on what he's going to be. And if Lars Nootbaar continues to be what he's been, he's a $100 million player potentially. I know that sounds crazy to people, but look at the contracts the guys are getting. He's going to be young when he hits free agency potentially, and he's going to be a guy that does all of the things that Major League Baseball front offices are valuing now. He hits the ball hard, he gets on base at a really high clip, and he plays plus defense, and he's a good athlete. That's a dude that gets paid in the free agent market. So I'm curious to see how the Cardinals value him relative to the rest of the National League.
He'd get a little less than a Nimmo deal right now.
Probably.
Essentially. And I think that was, 5 by 125? So he'd probably be like 5 by 110 would be my guess right now, which is wild.
Crazy, man. But that's the way that baseball works. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 5 minutes, we'll get into our rewind. But right now, I got to tell you about this Saturday. I'm going to be at Genesis of St. Charles for an afternoon filled with fun and excitement. Saturday from 1 to 3 o'clock. Bring the whole family by for a face painting, a balloon artist, food trucks, and a special appearance by Louie and the Blue Crew. Plus, I will have your chance to win a pair of Blues tickets for home games this year. That is this Saturday from 1 to 3 o'clock. Genesis of St. Charles. It's located at 5601 Veterans Memorial Parkway. I'll see you guys on Saturday. All the details at 101ESPN.com. The Rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, 101 ESPN is going to be broadcasting live from inside Ballpark Village this Thursday for opening day. Cardinals home opener is finally here. We'll be set up just steps away from the stadium. TMA, BK, and Ferrario both coming to you live on Thursday from Ballpark Village. Our opening day broadcast is presented by General Pest Services, by Rawlings, and by Budweiser. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys have missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company. The podcast is brought to you by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
The 101 ESPN app is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
I was going to do that at some point.
Dobbs is in there. They present the 101 ESPN app, which is super easy to use.
2 months after they changed sponsorships for me to do it,
and
but it's fine.
Free to download as well. You guys can check us out on YouTube as always, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. It's been a very active chat today. Baseball season is officially here. It's been active over there, been a lot of viewers over there, so check it out if you haven't seen it before, if you haven't been in there before. Baseball season is, in my opinion at least, the time where it really thrives and gets off the ground running. All right, Alex, let's get into this. Finish off today's show by going through some of the biggest stories from today. Let's start out with the St. Louis Blues. They played two, I thought, okay, games over the weekend. Doesn't really matter. They passed the test. They got 2 points in the first one. They got 2 points in the second one. Get both wins. What'd you think of the Blues over the weekend?
Yeah, I think they didn't have their best games for the first time that I can say since the Four Nations break, and they still found a way to pick up 4 points. And to me, that's a sign of a really good and confident team. They had a lot of games where they played 6 and 8 days. They picked up points in every single one of them, picked up wins in every single one of them, and they got the job done because they needed to extend the lead. Now that Calgary still has 3 games in hand, they're 4 points up on the Flames, 5 points up on the Canucks, and 6 points up on the Utah Hockey Club. But now they're going to have to get back into that locked-in mode because now they start to take on a lot of teams that are sitting in playoff spots.
All right, T-Bone, you had a game over the weekend to watch. The Illini did not realize that they had that game to play, and unfortunately, they got their asses handed to them by the Kentucky Wildcats. 84-75, Illinois season comes to its conclusion. What'd you make of this Illinois season now that it is officially wrapped up?
Oh, it was quite the roller coaster, and I don't know what to really make of it. I don't think you can deem it a success because they didn't end up getting to the Sweet 16, and they have 2 potential lottery picks in Yakachonis and Will Riley. So I would say it's a disappointing season for the Illini, and I'll be curious to know if Brad Underwood goes away from kind of the one and done after going with it this year. He's in on a bunch of big recruits, but I wonder if he'll kind of tail off a little bit and really hit the portal hard.
That's the first time that the Sweet 16 is composed exclusively of major conference teams since the Sweet 16 officially began in 1975. Certainly none of the Cinderellas have made it to the Sweet 16. Really, the lowest seeded team that remains is John Calipari's Arkansas Razorbacks, who had some hope coming into the season, but it did not go the way that they were expecting. 0-5 to start out the SEC schedule. On the Cardinals side of things, they have officially made their decisions when it comes to their opening day roster. I'm on the unpopular side of things. I actually thought it was right to send McGreevy down, which most people disagree with, and I personally would not have had Victor Scott coming to the opening day roster with them. It complicates things. Victor Scott earned it with his performance in the spring. For me, though, I would have gone with the guys that you need to find out things about right now. And it sure sounds like the player that will lose playing time because Victor Scott is in the lineup and he will be in the lineup every day, according to the Cardinals, is Nolan Gorman. And to me, this was the year, this was the time where you needed to get answers on him. It sounds like that will probably not be the case early on this season. Matthew Liberatore will be a part of their 5-man rotation to open things up. I think that's right. I personally don't think it's going to work. But if you think that Matthew Liberatore can be a starter, this is the time where you've got to get some information on that, and they're going to be able to find out some of that early on this season. We'll break that down more as we go along this week. Cardinals begin begin the regular season on Thursday with opening
Brain
day.
farts today.
T-Bone and myself will have a fun announcement for you guys tomorrow on the show as well. The Blues back in action tomorrow night. It's a busy time of the year here on BK and Ferrario. We're going to have it all for you right here as things go along. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.